My chicken sandwich and coffee. My chicken sandwich and coffee. I want them off the chip. I don't care what it takes. I want them off the chip.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your existential Mr. Rogers, and I forgot to do it. Oh, I missed out. Your Archbishop of Banterbury, and your... I don't even remember. It's just, after watching little Braxton Bowles recreate a scene from The Trouble with Tribbles, I was so taken aback that I forgot myself. Absolutely forgot myself. I am Robert Meyer Burnett, your host, and this is Robservations, episode number 439. And I'm, of course, Robcasting at all of you imagination connoisseurs from this, the Robservatory. And you know what's going on in the Robservatory all day today? Let me tell you. We, all of us, all of the denizens that live here, all of the characters and the comic books and everything that is celebrating the great Willow Yang's birthday. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is Willow Yang's birthday today. And from everyone who exists here, perhaps they only exist in my imagination, but for everything and creature and person and character and every one of us sends a profound birthday wish to the great Miss Willow Yang, who resides in the Great White North. And I hope you all join us in wishing Willow Yang, a cornerstone member, a foundational member of the Post-Geek Singularity, a happy birthday. So happy birthday, Willow. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Willow. Happy birthday to you. I wonder if you can get a copyright strike for singing that on YouTube. I guess we'll find out. Willow, may your next twirl around the sun be your best yet. Anyway, I think that's pretty great. Happy birthday. I mean that sincerely. And speaking of birthdays, I had one last month. And you know, there were videos, stuff happened. I'm catching up on even now. And Joey Koch sent me a birthday card that I apparently missed. And I got to show this to you. Look at this. Look at this birthday card. This is an amazing birthday card. It's by Joey Koch. And not only does it celebrate Aurora Models, I even have an Aurora Models. That's the new Aurora logo, an older Aurora logo. Aurora Models was a model kit company that made monster model kits, and they did spaceship models. And I loved them when I was a kid. And look at this artwork, man. This is some amazing, amazing artwork. And I want to thank Joey Koch for sending it in, because it celebrates not only Aurora Models, but it celebrates my love of Hammer horror. He even says at the top, get hammered. So, Joey, I want to thank you for that. And I'm sorry I didn't see it actually on my birthday. Now, guess who else is here? Guess who else sent me a video I didn't see? That's right, B.L. Alley, our own writer, B.L. Alley.
The following program is brought to you in living color on NBC.
Hey, Rob. It's BL. I just wanted to say happy birthday again and let you know how much fun I had at the Zoom party. That was quite an interesting evening. The other thing I wanted to do was also say thank you for the really nice card you sent in response to the gift I sent you. Although for the life of me, I can't figure out how you knew I was having a bridal shower or that the colors were lavender and baby blue, but regardless, I really appreciate it. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. I'll see you later online, and have a better day.
Well, I want to thank BL for that. Thank you, sir. For those of you who might not know, we are having another Zoom party tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon. That's right, 2 in the afternoon. I'm going to do a Robservations tomorrow at noon. and then I'll probably go until 1:45. I'll go get my drink on or whatever, and Elizabeth and I will be here for a combination whining about movies and Robservations Zoom party, but we're not going to get too hammered because we're going to do whining about movies tomorrow night, not tonight, and we are going to do Jerry Maguire. We switched about time, didn't seem to float anyone's boat, so we're going to do Jerry Maguire. Show me the money. Show me the money. I love Jerry Maguire. I'm a huge fan of Cameron Crowe, and Jerry Maguire and Almost Famous are two films that are near and dear to my heart, but Elizabeth picked it. Elizabeth picked Jerry Maguire, so we're going to do that. So tomorrow, Robservations at noon. Then we're going to do a Zoom party at 2. I don't know how long it'll go if no one shows up. I don't know. Last time we had a pretty good, it was pretty great. It was pretty epic Zoom party tomorrow afternoon. So hopefully our European friends can join us because they'll be in their cups because it's Saturday night. And then we, of course, can do some day drinking and shoot the shit. All of you imagination connoisseurs, I hope everybody can come. I certainly hope if Willow isn't continuing her birthday festivities, she'll be here. And that's exciting. Now, I have yet another video that was sent to me, and this one comes from Torrin Atkinson. And I, again, missed this one. I'm trying to catch up on all the videos people are sending me. And remember, if you want, you can go to the Burnettwork.net website and send me a video. Once again, Torrin Atkinson, take it away.
Ja, Cthulhu Vertagen. No need to panic. Don't call the police. It's just me, Torrin. I'm here today to tell you about the secrets of the darkest of the hillside thickets and my personal story of meeting Stuart Gordon and what almost maybe possibly could have been. The year was probably about 2000, 2001, 2002, the year of our release of our album, Spaceship Zero. Yes, there it is. Which, as I mentioned in a letter, was the official motion picture soundtrack to a movie that didn't really exist. We made this official role-playing game in which you can play a space gladiator, a robot, super intelligent cat, and so much more. The band played live at the festival in which Stuart Gordon was the guest of honor. So we, of course, met Stuart Gordon. He came to our live show. He danced. We went to see Dagon. This was the release year of Dagon. So everybody at the film festival watched Dagon, and Stuart Gordon sat right behind me during the screening. What a thrill. Of course, we had told him all about Spaceship Zero, and he was interested. He said, if you ever actually write a screenplay or want to pitch it to me as a real movie, here's my card, here's my number, get in touch with me. And I thought, wow, what an amazing opportunity. An opportunity which I sadly did not take, and that is one of my regrets to this day. And now, so sadly, this amazing, gentle, lovable, genius is no longer with us. So that opportunity is whooshed. But life goes on. The band lived on and continued and thrives to this day. Let me introduce you quickly to a very brief discography and incomplete. It's actually May the 4th while I'm recording this. So I'd like to introduce you to Cthulhu Strikes Back with the band in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon there. Sorry about all the reflections. I should have taken it out of the sleeves. Our 2008 release was The Shadow Out of Tim, which has such songs as Cultists on Board, Some Things Man Was Not Meant to Know, and Operation Get the Hell Out of Here. The Dukes of Al-Hazred, our most recent album, with such tracks as Arachnotopia, Coelacanthum, The Great Molasses Disaster, and It Must Be the Wind. The H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival is also the place where I met, for the first time, Mike Mignola, and I have a story to tell you about Mike Mignola and Bill Sienkiewicz. But I will save that story for another video. I know your time is precious. The imagination connoisseurs want to listen to you and not to me. But thanks for listening, and I'm going to send a bunch of this stuff to you, and you can enjoy it at your leisure. And until next time, Ya Ya Cthulhu Fatagan, and I'll see you on the internet.
Well, I want to thank Torrin for sending that video in. A day late and a dollar short. How about a month late and more than a dollar short? I'm sorry I didn't see that to play. What a great video. And I'm going to start looking at, I have to pay more attention to when you guys send me videos. So send them. Send me videos about anything if you want to take me to task for anything I've said, or you want to tell me about a cool project you're involved with, or just, muse about give me some existential musings about life. I'll play them. Again, go to the Burnettwork.net website, check it out, send me videos, send me letters, and yeah. So as I jump into this show, a lot of crazy stuff going on. Obviously, look, a discussion is now being had across all spectrums of society. I don't know if anyone knows this, but Dave Chappelle dropped a secret special that he recorded mere days ago. It's short. It's just over a half an hour, and it's all about his feelings about what has happened. I'm a huge Dave Chappelle fan, and this was about as raw as it gets. It's a lot of political commentary, and it's a little bit of humor, but it's basically his feelings about what happened. And I watched it. Again, it's a little over 30 minutes. It's more of a reaction than it is a comedy special, but I applaud him for it. And he is a clear thinker. He really knows how to express himself well. I mean, he has such a keen mind, and I'm always willing to listen to Dave Chappelle, and it is very much worth your time, and it's free. Even if you don't have Netflix, you can go to the Netflix YouTube channel, and you can watch the special there. And I suggest everybody go and do that. It's very interesting. Now, we've talked about, of course, the last show I did. I talked about Gone with the Wind, and I've been reading a lot of things, both pro and con, about how we're going to get rid of all of our problematic material. Well, let me just say, when tempers are hot, it's never the best time to make these kinds of decisions. I am not for censorship. As you all know, I believe in preserving our history, both good and bad. Humanity has certainly a litany of horrors that we've perpetrated against one another over the last thousands of years. And I think these things should be preserved and contextualized, not destroyed, not censored. Because we have to remember where we've come from so we learn how not to do those things again. I also think that knee-jerk reactions characterizing our law enforcement as 100% bad is ridiculous. The evidence doesn't support that, and the men and women who have given their lives for the service, for public service, many of them, most of them, are good people, and that has been bared out through statistics. So before we decide to destroy all of our governing bodies and all of those bodies that protect us, we have to stop and really think about what's going on. Is there systemic racism? Of course. And we must be ever diligent and combat not just the police, but all institutions. Again, I ask, why isn't the water in Flint, Michigan clean? Why? I also think it's the same problem that we've always had. If there's no money in it, we don't seem to be interested. And I want to quote Michael Corleone from Godfather 3, a movie that doesn't give nearly enough credit. And I think all the lessons in life you can learn, all the lessons you need to know, are somewhere in all three Godfather movies. But Michael Corleone flat out says that helping your fellow man is profitable. And we need to be doing that. We need to be doing that. America, as far as Black America is concerned, for 400 years, I'm telling you, there's been no equality, and it would be a much better place if there was equality. And I think that we need to work on that. However, I don't think eliminating all forms of entertainment are necessarily the way to go, which I wanted to talk about. Now, one of the first things I wanted to talk about is a show I really don't know what it is, because I've never watched it. The Paw Patrol. The Paw Patrol. A backlash is mounting against depictions of good cops on television and in the streets. As many people know, I've conveyed certain stories about how I had very great interactions with law enforcement over my life, especially one time in high school when a friend of mine came to me and told me her story of terrible abuse, and it was the police that I was able to take her to, and I will be forever grateful. And I think that this idea that we are portraying our law enforcement in a terrible light, that every member of law enforcement is bad, is ridiculous. And we need to remember that every single day we have people out on the streets trying to help others. And for the most part, they do that. And we can't forget that. I'm sorry, I just don't trust all of us as people to not have a police force. Because, I mean, look, if we didn't have cops or we didn't have the FBI, look at the financial malfeasance alone. We're a bunch of crooks in the United States. I mean, we bend the law, but hey, I think it's important to remember that it's always nice to have checks and balances in our society, and I think our boys in blue and women in blue, everybody who protects this nation deserves a fair shake. They're putting themselves out on the line all the time, and to be vilified is to do exactly what people have done to others for such a long period of time. So, anyway, Paw Patrol. The protests come from Paw Patrol. This is from the New York Times yesterday by Amanda Hess, June 10th, 2020. It was only a matter of time before the protests came for Paw Patrol. Paw Patrol is a children's cartoon about a squad of canine helpers. It's basically a pretense for placing household pets in a variety of cool trucks, which, by the way, sounds like a genius idea for a show, just so you know. The team includes Marshall, a firefighting Dalmatian, Rubble, a bulldog construction worker, and Chase, a German Shepherd who is also a cop. In the world of Paw Patrol, Chase is drawn to be a very good boy who barks stuff like, "Chase is on the case," and "all in the police pup's day," as he rescues kittens in his tricked-out SUV. But last week, when the show's official Twitter account put out a bland call for black voices to be heard, commentators came after Chase. Euthanize the police dog, they said. Defund the Paw Patrol. All dogs go to heaven except the class traitors in the Paw Patrol. It's a joke, but it's also not. As the protests against racist police violence enter their third week, the charges are mounting against fictional cops too. Even big-hearted cartoon police dogs, or maybe especially big-hearted cartoon police dogs, are on notice. The effort to publicize police brutality also means banishing the good cop archetype, which reigns on both television and in viral videos of the protests themselves. Paw Patrol seems harmless enough, and that's the point. The movement rests on understanding that cops do plenty of harm. The protests arrived in the midst of a pandemic that has alienated Americans from their social ties, family lives, and workplaces. New and intense relationships with content have filled the gap, and now our quarantine consumptions are being reviewed with an urgently political eye. The reckoning has come for newspapers, food magazines, Bravo reality shows, and police procedurals. Last week, Tom Sharpling, an executive producer of Monk, criticized his own show on Twitter. If you, as I have, worked on a TV show or a movie in which police are portrayed as lovable goofballs, you have contributed to the larger acceptance that cops are implicitly the good guys. Griffin Newman, an actor who appeared in 2 episodes of Blue Bloods as a detective, donated his $11,000 in earnings to a bail fund, inspiring other actors who have played cops to do the same. Lego has halted marketing on its Lego City Police Station and police highway arrest sets. A&E has pulled its reality show Live PD from the schedule. On Tuesday night, Cops, the show that branded suspects as bad boys and spawned the whole genre of reality crime television, was canceled after 32 seasons. Cops are just not television stars, they are television's biggest stars. Crime shows are TV's most popular genre, now making up more than 60% of primetime drama programming on the big 4 broadcast networks. The tropes of the genre are so predictable that a whole workplace sitcom, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, is layered atop of them. A police station was a shortcut, Dan Gore, the show's co-creator, has said, because people are very aware of how police television works. You know instantly who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. That shortcut now feels like a cheat. After images of a very special episode where Terry Crews is racially profiled were passed around as evidence of responsible police TV, others mark the show as copaganda. Even on television, the good guys are not always so good. In a recent report, the racial justice organization Color of Change assessed depictions of the police across television and found that modern cop shows make heroes out of people who violate our rights. Many of them, it argued, show the good guys committing more violations than the bad guys, making police misbehavior feel relatable, forgivable, acceptable, and ultimately good. On television, the hero itself is a concept under review. Just a few years ago, at the height of the anti-hero craze, a prestige drama could seem a little fluffy if its protagonist was not an actual murderer. There is an artistic justification for humanizing bad people and complicating good ones. It's hard to argue that a show like Watchmen, in which a black policewoman brutally beats suspected white supremacist terrorists, or Unbelievable, in which two female detectives repeatedly collar the wrong guys, would make for better television if their star cops acted more like German Shepherd puppies. After Inku Kang, a critic for The Hollywood Reporter, described The Wire as a painting police with a heroic gloss, Wendell Pierce, who played Detective Bunk Moreland on the show, pushed back. How can anyone watch The Wire and the dysfunction of the police and the war on drugs and say we were depicted as heroic, he tweeted. We demonstrated moral ambiguities and the pathology that leads to the abuses. Yes, Wendell Pierce, you are a national treasure, sir, and I love you as an actor, and I love what you said here. Also, you should check out the Treme if you haven't. Not him, but if you haven't watched Treme, you should check it out. The more salient critique of the crime genre is not how it depicts the police, but just how obsessively it privileges their ambiguities and pathologies over all other players in the criminal justice system, namely the people cops target as suspects. As TV reviewers, we are locked inside a police perspective, Catherine Van Arendonk wrote recently on Vulture. Color of Change notes that defense attorneys like Perry Mason and Matlock once embodied the character of the American hero, defending the American people against the many police officers, prosecutors, and judges who jumped to conclusions too quickly and stood as symbols of a deeply flawed system. But a sea change, led by Dick Wolf's mammoth Law and Order franchise, has realigned the crime genre under the perspective of prosecutors and cops. Our sympathies have generally been with the victims, Warren Leight, the showrunner of Law & Order SVU, said last week on the Hollywood Reporter podcast, TV's Top 5, in a conversation about rethinking the show. He added, cops behaving illegally, that's not part of Dick's brand. Cops in Hollywood enjoy a symbiotic relationship, as Alyssa Rosenberg detailed in a Washington Post series in 2016 on policing in popular culture. Cops consult on movies and series, helping mold the characters to their self-conception, and then they take cues from those characters in their own police work. Police officers in Detroit have been spotted wearing the skull insignia of the Marvel anti-hero The Punisher, and squads in Minnesota have watched Disney's Zootopia as part of their anti-bias training. Law and Order has become President Trump's preferred call to arms as the government dispatches police forces and National Guard soldiers against the protesters. The good cop trope is a standard of both police procedurals and real-life tactics, and now crowdsourced videos of the protests have given cops a new stage for performing the role. In recent days, supposedly uplifting images of the police have spread widely across the internet, competing for views with evidence of cops beating, gassing, and arresting protesters. In Houston, an officer consoled a young black girl at a rally. "We're here to protect you, okay?" he told her, enveloping her in a big hug. "You can protest, you can party, you can do whatever you want. Just don't break nothing." In Nashville, the police tweeted a photo of cops kneeling next to a black boy with a Black Lives Matter sign, smiling from behind their riot helmets. And in Atlanta, a line of National Guard soldiers did the Macarena. On the final rump shake, a black rifle slung over one soldier's back swung to the beat. These images show cops engaging in a kind of pantomime of protest, mimicking the gestures of the demonstrators until their messages are diluted beyond recognition. They reframe protests against racist police violence into a bland, non-specific goal of solidarity. These moments are meant to represent the shared humanity between officers and protesters, but cops already rank amongst the most humanized groups in America. The same cannot be said for the black Americans who live in fear of them. Cops can dance, they can hug, They can kneel on the ground, but their individual acts of kindness can no longer obscure the violence of a system. The Good Cop Act is wearing thin. Very good points to be made, but I would say this. All of us, like I say, all of us imagination connoisseurs, we all love science fiction, fantasy, and horror. And I think, remember, we can't forget, we're all Americans. You know, I think all Americans ultimately believe in truth, justice, and the American way, whatever that is. And has America ever been perfect? Has it ever been the ideal that we all aspire to if we're Americans? Surely not. We have a very long way to go. We've always had a very long way to go. But, you know, lines of division amongst our society, we just don't need more of them. What we need to do is repair and talk and listen to all sides. And I just think that vilifying groups of people that, for the most part, those institutions are here to help people. You know, whether your car gets broken into or stolen. I've had 2 cars stolen since I've lived in L.A. Well, you know who went and helped me when I had my car stolen? The police. The police helped me. And both instances did not end well for my cars, unfortunately. But at least the police were there to help when I needed them to. Now, that's something to remember. The police are there to help you find your car if it's ripped off. And in that case, there's really not a whole lot with policing that can go wrong if they're trying to look for your car. And I just, you know, it always worries me when you want to paint someone with a brush and say that everybody is that same coat of paint. And it's what we've been doing for a long time to people, and we need to evolve, we need to move forward, and we need to move forward together. The only way we're going to change things on a systemic level is if we do it together and listen to everybody, listen to what they have to say. But, you know, vilifying people. Anyway, something else, ladies and gentlemen, something else got canceled. Well, not canceled, but at least taken down. And I wanted to read about this. For those of you who might not know, there's an old British show. John Cleese of Monty Python was in it, called Fawlty Towers. If you've never seen Fawlty Towers, it is one of the funniest shows I've ever seen as far as British humor is concerned. This was published today at 9 o'clock in the morning by Jake Cantor in Deadline. John Cleese rails against stupid removal of a Fawlty Towers episode from the UK TV archive. Monty Python star John Cleese has voiced his disapproval of a decision by BBC Studios-owned broadcaster UK TV to scrub an episode of the classic British comedy Fawlty Towers from its back catalogue. UK TV removed The Germans from its gold box set of downloadable programs, citing the fact that it contained racial slurs. UK TV was not specific about the slur, but it is believed to have been uttered by a character, the Major, played by Ballard Berkeley, who uses the N-word when referring to a Caribbean sportsman. We regularly review older content to ensure that it meets audience expectations and are particularly aware of the impact of outdated language, UK TV said in a statement. Some shows carry warnings and others are edited. We want to take time to consider our options for this episode. Cleese, who co-created and starred in Fawlty Towers, which aired from 75 to 79, told Australian newspaper The Age that the show was laughing at the Major rather than laughing with him. The Major was an old fossil left over from decades before. We were not supporting his views, we were making fun of them, said Cleese. If they can't see that, if people are too stupid to see that, what can one say? He lashed out at BBC executives as part of the interview, though UK TV operates independently of BBC Studios, which in turn is not part of the BBC's public service operation. He said a lot of the people in charge now at the BBC just want to hang on to their jobs. If a few people get excited, they pacify them rather than standing their ground as they would have 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. UK TV's decision comes as Netflix and others have taken down British comedies such as Little Britain because they featured performers in blackface. It follows the Black Lives Matter movement, forcing issues of discrimination and equality up the social agenda after the death of George Floyd at the hands of police in Minneapolis. Cleese was supportive of the Black Lives Matter mission. At the moment, There's a huge swell of anger and a really admirable feeling that we must make our society less discriminatory, and I think that part of it is very good, he said. It seems to me the best parts of the George Floyd protests have been very moving and very, very powerful. Again, we're never going to be able to erase our past. As I've said many times before, human beings, we don't have a really good record of treating each other very well. And if we're going to scrub every instance of language, I mean, does that mean, is Mark Twain next on the top chopping block? I mean, are we going to lose all of those things? We can't. We have to have our past contextualized so we know where we were coming from so we can do better next time. And I just, censorship is a slippery slope, because what happens is when people are deciding to do things based out of anger or a knee-jerk response to want to do good now, hey, I think it's great everybody's talking, but let's talk in a year or 2 or 3. Let's make sure that this change is something that can continue, and it's something that we can have in our society, that we can look back in maybe a decade or 2 and we can say, look at how far we've come. We certainly did it with our LGBTQ brothers and sisters and non-binary folks by making same-sex marriage legal. 20 years ago, who would have thought that would have happened? And look at how quickly it occurred. Now, I have faith. I think we're able to do this. I think Americans are best in a crisis. So let's make stuff. Let's make it happen. Let's make real change happen, real systemic change. But I don't think that censorship is the answer at all. Anyway, now the topic at hand. Which movies do you want to see? You know, what do you want to see today? So today in the Hollywood Reporter, there was this article. Which movies will audiences deem mask-worthy? I actually kind of like this term, mask-worthy. Dude, was that mask-worthy? I mean, you could say it for anything. Like, you get a date, you're going to go out with somebody. When you come back, your friends are going to be like, guys or girls, they're going to say, was he or she mask-worthy? I mean, I like this. I like this idea. So this is at 7 a.m. this morning. Pamela McClintock and Rebecca Keegan write this. Which movies will audiences deem mask-worthy? Studios strategize as theaters plan to reopen. Amid the novel coronavirus pandemic, marketers are tasked with convincing viewers to head to theaters for Hollywood's big screen return. Messaging is really twicky. How about this? There's one message about movie theaters, and that is you won't get sick and die if you go see the movies. There's where it's at. Can you prove that? We've got coronavirus cases going back up in the United States. We're over 114,000 deaths. Our behavior over the last month does not seem to be pointing in a good direction. But we'll see. We've got this summer, right? I guess I'll be listening to Bananarama a lot and their remake of Cruel Summer. So, hey, but I really think that I also want to go see Christopher Nolan's Tenet badly. And if theaters were open, and if I had to wear a scuba suit, if Elizabeth and I had to go rent a scuba suit and rebreathers and full-on, rubber suits with flippers and masks and gloves, and I could watch Tenet, I would do it. That's where I'm at with Tenet right now. On a recent June afternoon, a splashy commercial for Artemis Fowl, a big-budget sci-fi movie Disney Plus inherited from one of the company's theatrical divisions, aired on ESPN during a 28-year-old rerun of a Michael Jordan NBA game. In late May, when Warner Brothers premiered the second trailer for Christopher Nolan's Tenet, the studio bypassed television altogether and debuted the spot on the popular online game Fortnite. As Hollywood prepares to begin releasing movies in theaters again, possibly as early as July, studio marketers are having to get creative to reach audiences since the COVID-19 pandemic has wiped out in-theater trailers and live sports advertising, the top avenues for promoting a film. What studios now have to sell viewers is an unusually complex message. Not just a film, but the idea of moviegoing itself. And there is the issue of striking the right tone in a moment when audiences are living with the grim reality of a global pandemic, civil unrest over police violence, and economic devastation. Movies are still escapist, and people want to get away more now than ever, says Russell Schwartz, an ex-marketing exec at Relativity and New Line Cinema who now teaches at AFI and Chapman College. But now the marketing effort will be 20 seconds to sell the movie and 10 seconds to sell the audience on the idea of even going to the theater. In pre-virus times, the Tenet trailer would likely have been tied to the NBA Finals, held during the first 2 weeks of June. Warner Brothers also would have bought billboards in Los Angeles, New York, and other major cities across the country and globe, but when the pandemic brought moviegoing to a standstill in the latter half of March, Hollywood began the largest calendar migration in its history, relocating titles to later in the year and to 2021. Now, marketers of movies due this summer must map out their pre-release plans for films, which typically launch in earnest a month before movies hit theaters, in an unsteady environment where the release dates may have to move yet again in response to local health conditions and government rules. Amid these shifts, major Hollywood studios have spent 52.9% less to market movies on TV this year than they did during the same January 1st through May 28th period in 2019, according to iSpot.tv. In May, the traditional start of the summer box office spending is down 98.7% from last year. Phew, no wonder people are out of work. Meanwhile, the amount studios devoted to promoting home entertainment, a category that includes premium video on demand but not the streaming services, has jumped 87.4% to year-to-date and 285% in May. Despite the advent of digital rentals, home entertainment has languished the past decade since the DVD market collapsed. Studios subsequently spent less on ads for titles hitting homes until recently. The entertainment landscape is going through an evolution because of COVID, says Stuart Schwartzpeffel, iSpot's Senior VP of Media Partnerships. This has never happened. Home entertainment used to be a tiny piece of the pie. Is paid video on demand here to stay? Well, it's early to say. Studios are hoping cinemas will reopen in time for late summer tentpoles that include Tenet, Disney's Mulan, Paramount's SpongeBob the Movie, Sponge on the Run, and Warner's Wonder Woman 1984. In a bold move, new indie player Solstice Studios recently moved up its Russell Crowe thriller Unhinged from an early September to a July 1st date in hopes of riding a tsunami of publicity and being free from competition during what is normally one of the busiest box office corridors of the year. That was followed earlier this week by Sony's decision to open the romantic comedy The Broken Hearts Gallery on July 10th. While the challenges are formidable, there is an opportunity. The Unhinged trailer has 210 million media impressions to date, much more than the expected 50 million. There aren't 25 movies competing for attention, says Solstice Studios chief Mark Gill, the former Miramax and Millennium Films executive. What this tells you is people are looking for good news. They want to believe the world is coming back to normal. At the majors, marketing executives say their main challenge in the weeks and months to come will be convincing consumers it's safe to return to theaters. Across social media, nearly a third of the conversation around the Tenet trailer was about the pros and cons of theaters reopening instead of the movie itself. It's really about the audience. I call it mask-worthy movies, says one studio marketing chief. Are people willing to put a mask on to see your movie? Oh, I can tell you this guy, yes, I'll wear a mask to see Tenet and Wonder Woman 84 and Mulan and whatever else comes down the pike. Hell yes. Poll after poll has found that consumers would be inclined to visit the multiplex if they could be assured certain safety measures are being taken, such as staggered seating and increased sanitation. 35% of the people recently surveyed by National Research Group said they would go to a movie today. The major theater chains are expected to spend millions of dollars on ads explaining what precautions they will take before flipping on the lights, while the National Association of Theater Owners is enlisting top filmmakers for a series of PSAs. The tenor of all advertising has changed drastically in the past 2 months. Instead of promoting products, many companies have created spots talking about the promise of tomorrow or what they're doing to support frontline healthcare workers and promote social distancing. Hollywood also is likely to take a different approach than it usually would in trumpeting a certain storyline. Messaging is really tricky, says one marketing veteran. We might tweak campaigns to make them a little more positive and a little more fun. That's what people want. They don't want stress, they want escapism. Gill concurs, referring to an internal survey commissioned by Solstice. One of the things we found is that people are looking for something that causes them to heavily engage, whether it's the most romantic story or the most funny story or the most diabolical thriller. They just want to be distracted, he says. We did a poll, and the number one genre in terms of forgetting the world was thrillers. Solstice is considering booking time on NASCAR, one of the few live sporting events on television. Warner's also used NASCAR for a Tenet spot in late May, along with a special charity golf match featuring Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, Tom Brady, and Peyton Manning. It also advertised on such programs as The Masked Singer and the Jordan documentary The Last Dance, which are both done for the season. The NHL is expected to return in mid-July and the NBA on July 31st. Once theater going does resume, studio marketers will face a new dilemma as Hollywood works to squeeze 18 months worth of product into 1 year. The next 12 months are going to be odd, says Gill. Next summer will be crazy and fiercely competitive. Well, what do you think, people? Are you eager to go to the movies? Are you coming back? Are you gonna go see Tenet? Are you gonna roll out to see Wonder Woman 84 or Mulan? You gonna go see Russell Crowe being unhinged? Looks good to me. I don't know. What do you all think? I personally, I think that we can. I've been very impressed by how our local Vons. Vons is a grocery store where people are filling up that place, going down aisles, grabbing things. I've been very impressed how our Vons, you get hand sanitized when you go in. They sanitize the carts, and they're making it work. And I'm still going to Vons, and everyone in there is wearing masks. They've even made all the aisles you can only go one way. I mean, who would have thought all of the aisles in a supermarket would now be one-way streets? But they are. I honestly, I feel guilty because sometimes I forget that, and I go the wrong way, and I can tell people they're looking at me thinking, you went the wrong way, but we're not used to anybody yet getting that mad at somebody at a grocery store for going down the wrong way because, you're not paying attention. You're looking for whatever it is. I'm not used to looking for traffic directions in the grocery store, but I think with the new normal, maybe I will soon. Anyway, look, I desperately want to see movies. I'm selfish like that. I want to see Tenet in IMAX on a giant screen, preferably at the Chinese in Hollywood. That means I either have to take the train or we have to drive, and then we still have to park in the structure and come up. I mean, I just know that I really want to see Tenet in IMAX badly. We'll see. We'll see where it goes. I really want everything to open. I really want our businesses to be back on a paying basis. So let's hope that there are good times ahead, ladies and gentlemen. At least I would like to think that they are. I have a lot of letters, a deluge of letters, and that makes me happy because you guys are watching the show. You got things to say. I'm really proud and honored how everybody has been sending me letters. So I want to thank you for that, which is great. And let me just get into this. Richard H. writes in and says, so I made this, not sure what you'd call it, docu-music video sort of encapsulating the historic week we had. I just woke up one morning last week to my alarm radio playing Won't Get Fooled Again, and the images flooded my mind, so I went forth and created. Though I gotta say, I'm a little hesitant to post it, seeing how sensitive the current state of things is. In the end, it is a hopeful video, a little backlash I can handle, but I don't want to get into actual trouble or it could come off as too soon. Maybe I'm just letting anxiety get to me. What do you think? Should you choose to check it out, which I totally get if you don't want to or can't for any reason. Same goes for feedback. I get it if you can't, but I'm always looking to get better. Feedback is always welcome. Thanks, stay safe, and live long and prosper. Well, Richard H., I have not watched this video yet, but I'm putting the link in the live chat so imagination connoisseurs can watch it, and they're a pretty fair bunch, so I look forward to seeing your work. If you want to send me a video, remember, there's a couple of videos people have sent me with copywritten music in them. YouTube has a lot of music that is open source. You can use it. If you use, like somebody sent me a really cool video of their collection, but they use the music from the Avengers, which I can't use because I'll get a copyright strike against the channel. So you've got to, when you send me videos, you've got to put music that is open source, so I can put those videos up. So yes, so I wonder what people think. Omar94 sends in a daily letter that he does. So Omar, good to see you again. Hi Rob, this is hard to put into words since I find myself trying to figure this out, but here goes. Something I find lacking with movies now is that I don't feel a sense I'm watching something truly special. I mean, I absolutely love and adore movies, but movies now seem to lack something I can't put into words. When I watch a movie from classic Hollywood, I see the studio logo, music, and opening credits. I feel like I'm going to watch something that is special. Even when I've seen the movie countless times, I still feel a sense of excitement every time the movie starts with the logo, music, and opening credits. And it can be for any type of movie, whether it's in animation from Disney, something like Bringing Up Baby, crime like The Maltese Falcon, romance like Sabrina, fantasy like The Thief of Baghdad, adventure like The Adventures of Robin Hood, etc. Movies from New Hollywood have been able to do that as well, mostly the blockbusters and or pop culture influenced movies from Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Francis Ford Coppola, Robert Zemeckis, James Cameron, John McTiernan, etc. Or if it was a Disney animated movie from the Renaissance era. But with movies now, I feel there's an empty space where something is missing. I don't know what it is. I'm not sure if others feel that way. Maybe it's just me. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Omar, I too think about this all the time, and I have a theory about what it is. So before, when movies were made, the studios, obviously, movies to me are the ultimate collision of art and commerce. Obviously, studios are in the business to make money, but on the other hand, what they would do was, I think, first and foremost, it was the stories that they were telling. They decided to make movies where, first and foremost, the studios are like, this is the story we want to tell. They were looking for what were great stories, great scripts. And then they're like, we already know that this story is great, so now let's find the best talent to make these films. And then all the people that they were hiring, everyone, yeah, we all want to get paid. But I'll tell you this, making movies is not just a job. I mean, maybe for some it is, but if you're in the upper echelons of creativity, it's a calling. And nowadays, I think the studios, the big budget movies that are being made are simply product. They're pre-marketed, marketing departments weigh in and decide what they can sell. And unless all the names of people that you cited, they were all visionary storytellers first. They all got into the profession. Steven Spielberg was not thinking, I want to make tons of money in Hollywood. I mean, he might have. But what he really wanted to do was make movies. And I think anybody who wants to get into making movies, you know that if you do a good job making movies, and everyone thinks they're going to do a good job, or why get into it. But everybody who does that understands that if they do good work, money will follow. You know, I don't know a lot of really successful visionary directors who are all about the cash. You know, they wanted to make their movies. They wanted to tell their stories. Artists, look, getting paid to paint's one thing. And, you know, if you've got the factory or you're Andy Warhol or something and you're making pop art, making money became part of the actual art, that it became part of your brand. And the idea that he commercialized the New York art scene the way he did was, that in itself was a revolutionary artistic act. But I think the problem is we have fewer and fewer auteurs, real filmmakers making movies. When I say that, what I mean is nowadays the films that are being made by the studios, they're hiring directors based on, okay, that guy's movie or that girl's movie made this much money. So it's not even about, it's always now about the spreadsheets and about the money first and foremost, because it costs so much to make movies now. You know, a movie like Star Wars or Raiders or something, Empire Strikes Back, which costs $20 million. If they made Empire Strikes Back now, they're going to spend $200 million on it, and that's before marketing. So how are you supposed to make a movie that first and foremost stays true to itself? You know, you watch the movies you talk about, when they were making Back to the Future is a film that has a near perfect script, and you have Robert Zemeckis, a terrific director who really had control of the kind of movie that he wanted to make. He really understood what he was making, and he knew the story was good. He was within his powers to realize it in a grand fashion, and then the studio would take that movie. The studio just assumed that making Back to the Future would turn out well, and of course it did. Spielberg was producer. Robert Zemeckis is there. The marketing department knows that whatever they're going to get is something special. The Warner Brothers marketing department took credit for Inception being the big hit that it was. When Inception was made and people first looked at it, they were like, what is this? You know, I mean, it's that's the way things were, man. It was a crazy, crazy time. And I just think the reason movies are a lot more expensive now, so the commerce side has overshadowed art completely, and unfortunate. And that you're feeling it. Yeah. This next letter comes from Arnold Schwarzenegger, but Schwartz is spelled a little differently, so I don't think it's really Arnold Schwarzenegger, but hey, one never knows. Dear Mr. Burnett, first of all, I'd like to congratulate you on your podcasts. I first came across you through John Campia's show, and now I watched a few of your videos over at the Burnettwork, and I quite enjoy your discussions and your tolerance to those who have different opinions from you. I really love your work. Keep it up. Regarding this post, my inquiry is in regards to the Dune script. I managed to watch the video, which was banned due to a copyright strike, and I'm currently watching the video where you talked about the Vanity Fair images. What I would simply like to ask is this. Will Dune be R-rated? I believe that the Dune universe as a whole is designed for mature audiences, and you also described the script as quite adult, with Denis Villeneuve describing the movie as Star Wars for adults and his past filmography. What is the likelihood of an R rating? I also have one other inquiry. How much Arab Islamic influence will there be in the Denis Villeneuve version? Thank you, Mr. Burnett, and please answer only if you are comfortable to do so. I hope you and your family are well, and I wish you to have a great day. Well, I want to thank you, Arnold. What a great question. Well, first of all, I don't anticipate that Dune would be rated R. I mean, there's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of knife work in the fighting. But it really is an epic fantasy, and it doesn't. There wasn't anything egregious. I mean, there might be a few instances of people being in bed together, but I wouldn't imagine, unless there is nudity, there's not really a lot of bad language, but really violence and nudity. But I don't anticipate it getting an R rating. I don't think it will. I didn't get the feeling from the script. It's much more, when I meant adult, I didn't mean necessarily that it was adult. It wasn't adult like there's lots of sex and violence. I meant it was adult like it was smart and it was thoughtful, and it was about, aside from Paul Atreides being young, it was really about very political issues and those things. Now, for your other question about the Arab Islamic influence, for those of you who don't know, Dune has a lot of Islamic and Arab influences in it. The Fremen people are Muad'Dib. The Fremen people are based, there's a lot of Islamic and Arab influence in the books. And I think, I mean, it's all there because it's all part of the story. I don't know how they're going to weigh into that, but you watch it, and if you know anything about history or you know anything about Islamic culture, it's pretty obvious where all of this comes from. A lot of the words and things like that. And Frank Herbert was definitely drawing from a lot of those things. As a matter of fact, I think the first time I ever, because there was things in Dune I didn't get when I first read it, the first time I ever really encountered Islam was because of Dune. I started reading about Islam, going to the Quran or the Hadiths, things like that. And I think it's definitely there, and I think there's going to be, again, it's going to bring up conversation, about Islamic culture, and that can only be a good thing in the long run. I mean, look, I have come off in the past. I am not a fan of fundamentalist Islam, but then again, I'm not a fan of fundamentalist any religion, whether it's fundamentalist Christianity, fundamentalist Judaism. Can you be a fundamentalist? Is there fundamentalist Buddhism? I don't know. I just think that fundamentalism of any kind and is not necessarily a great thing, but I think Islamic culture is very, very rich, and if you go back and you go back into history, I mean, things like mathematics and foundational mathematics, a lot of that came out of Islamic culture. So one of the things that I think that was interesting about Dune is what the world building that Frank Herbert did, and you can't have a Dune movie without having allusions to Islamic culture. I don't know how much they're going to weigh into it, though. It'll be interesting. I mean, the script really concentrated on the plot, and it's very faithful to the novel. And for those of you who don't know, this Dune is only half the book, whereas David Lynch's Dune tried to encompass the entire book. Denis Villeneuve's version of Dune is only the first half of the book. So let's hope it's successful so they make another one. Christopher McCullough is here. He's becoming a favorite letter writer of mine. Mr. Burnett, not that you all aren't, but he always writes something thoughtful and interesting. Mr. Burnett, if you meet the Buddha, kill the Buddha. The idea that a superhero genre has made people ill-equipped to handle moral crisis such as we face today is actually fairly well-trodden territory. Whether or not Mr. Newby realized it, the denunciation of the hero in art is actually a leftist social critique. In the politics of power, it follows that whenever you invest in someone else's power over you, they will ultimately misuse or abuse it. This doesn't mean that people shouldn't have heroes. It means they shouldn't look at them to solve their problems. Richard Newby's article in the Hollywood Reporter on superheroes seems mainly to be informed by the MCU, so I'll have to disclaim I've seen only a handful of them. I got superhero fatigue with Iron Man 2, but the few I've seen after that, Guardians of the Galaxy, Winter Soldier, Civil War, Homecoming, have both proved me right and wrong about the film adaptations of these characters. I found it a little disconcerting with what little regard Newby treats the specter of fascism in this country, as though Captain America has only punched Germans in the past 40 years. Winter Soldier, in this regard, I found a much more subversive film than I thought possible of Disney and Marvel. Yep. The idea of Nazis entering American government in the wake of World War II is not a conspiracy, and the compromises America made during the Cold War made more than a few people worry about the changing nature of our democracy. I wonder if Newby is aware that Captain America was responsible for the death of Richard Nixon in Marvel's America, or that more recently he was briefly the leader of Hydra's America. Conversely, Civil War made clear that trying to jump into this 50-hour TV series at the mid-season finale wasn't possible. I'll have more to say on that. I'll have more to say on the letdown of Civil War compared to its source another time. Superman is the first superhero. In 80 years, any character can undergo fundamental changes, but at his inception, Superman was a public avenger, a being of limitless power with morals formed from an even then archaic, more pastoral time. Without going into Nietzsche too much, the Man of Tomorrow is supposed to represent the potential of our society, but just as important as his heroic persona is his human one. It's no accident that Superman's chosen profession is journalist. The only safeguard against the abuse of power is transparency. The only threat to a democratic society is cynicism, and Superman fights both with each persona. That said, if seeing your superheroes cozy up with agents of the system rubs you the wrong way, Superman went through a period where he showed a worrying deference to Reagan. But as much as the comics are known for their heroes, they're probably as well known for their anti-heroes. In my favorite Batman story, Year One, which is in fact a James Gordon story, the antagonist isn't any supervillain. It's a corrupt city filled with dirty cops and self-serving politicians. In one issue, we see a Detective Flass assault a black teenager with no more reason than to make clear what kind of police force Newby Gordon has just transferred into. Do you know about the move incident in Philadelphia when in 1985 the police firebombed a residential area? Frank Miller certainly did when he had Flass do the same in the climax of Batman's story. The point I'm trying to make isn't that comic heroes don't reinforce abusive power structures. The beautiful thing about comics has always been how, as a medium, it has the least middlemen between the artist and the audience. The same isn't true of Hollywood, which has an even more spotty relationship with racial politics and is known more than anything for sanding down the rough edges to make art more palatable to a wider audience. That corporate angle that comes up more and more. Contrary to popular opinion since the 1980s, the most common complaint leveled at comics is that they deal with moral problems with too much nuance, with every hero turned villain, every new hero an anti-hero, reaching the height of grimdark in the 90s. While the comic industry has been obsessed with deconstructing their myths, comics made into movies typically oversimplify every problem. So what really is the root of all evil? Wanting superheroes to live in a more cynical world isn't something I want. I know that because that's been the state of comics too often in my lifetime. The fight for justice shouldn't be gainsayed because it doesn't reflect your own fight. Only doing so invites the kind of destructive cynicism these myths are about fighting. Well, that's enough for me. This letter was like landing a plane with one engine. I had a lot to say about censorship, i.e. Civil War, but recent events made that more pertinent. So if you're unlucky, I'll write another letter about that too. Christopher, so help me I will. Well, Christopher, I'd love to read your article about Civil War, your letter about Civil War, because yeah, I mean, I love the Civil War comics. And for those of you who don't know, what started the Civil War in the comics was the New Warriors, which is a team, a super team. They were reality TV stars, and while fighting against supervillains on TV, there was an explosion by a school that killed a lot of kids. And it was the result of that fighting that led to what we know as in the movie the Sokovia Accords, but they were different in the comics, and then you had that rift occur. But there was a lot more. It was a lot more real world. There's a lot more real world stuff going on in the Civil War comics. Very interesting. So please, by all means, send me your letter. I would love to read that. Now let me jump back here because I've missed, like yesterday, people sent me before. Let's see. I think I did a whining about movies, but before that, I had some people send me super chats. If I go back far enough, let me find them because I think our birthday girl did. I'm just going back further and further and further and further and further. Well, can I find them? There's Willow. Given the first rule of Fight Club, I'm guessing this will be a very short review. I missed that one, so that's what Willow said. That's very funny, Willow. It's very cheeky and hilarious. So thank you for that. Now, Paul Gilmore says, I saw Fight Club 3 times on opening weekend, and I was the only one in the theater. First movie I ever saw where my jaw dropped, and the craft and the filmmaking was incredible. A psychologist said about the movie, it will either heal you or hurt you. I don't disagree. I mean, I really like Fight Club. Calvin Bose says, we have heard F-bombs and seen guys' heads lopped off on Star Trek. So now when will we see tits on Star Trek? It's all they have left to do. Well, Calvin, didn't we at some point, like Klingon breasts or something? I'm curious, like with Braxton, our youngest imagination connoisseur. I mean, you can't let Braxton watch Star Trek, can you? I can't even imagine that. Our birthday girl sends in another tip and says, what's the biggest movie plot twist that really caught you off guard? I got spoiled for a lot of movies, Usual Suspects, Sixth Sense, Empire Strikes Back, but I did manage to avoid the twist for Fight Club and the early reveal in The Matrix. Both of those, I would say that you hit the nail on the head there, Willow. For me, it was by far The Matrix. I knew nothing about The Matrix. I knew that Keanu Reeves had been in Robert Longo's Johnny Mnemonic. So when The Matrix was first coming out, it was kind of a joke. Like, I went because it was at Warner Brothers and it was on the Warner lot. It was in the Steve Ross Theater, this new theater. I'm like, I would go see anything there. And I knew nothing about The Matrix other than the guys that made Bound made it. And I liked Bound, but I couldn't, Bound is it's basically a movie set in a room pretty much. But they were doing this epic science fiction film that had manga influences, and I'm like, could it be? I don't know. Is this going to be any good? I really couldn't tell. So I go in and start watching it, and, from the beginning, you're hooked. But when it's revealed, the red pill, blue pill scene, when it's revealed that when Keanu Reeves wakes up as part of just an incomprehensibly huge, I don't know what you call it, power generating station using human beings to generate the power. I couldn't believe it. And it was so great because you are Neo at that time. You wake up with him and you're like, wait, what? And it was the way it was done. It's so disorienting. And it was just, I adore The Matrix, but it was done in such a brilliant way. I mean, one of the things I love about The Matrix, I always talk about authorship, but what the Wachowskis did in that film, they had such a vision for the movie that I think we're all the better for it. I mean, it's exactly why you go to the movies, to have the kind of experience that The Matrix provided for you. And I was blown away. And that moment, I literally was like, I think I must have been just like Keanu Reeves, I was like, no way. Like, I think I actually exclaimed that aloud when I saw the movie for the first time. Jeremy Tishabasu sends in a super chat and says, Rob, did you hear about Paw Patrol? I did. As you know, I covered it. If not, it's a children's cartoon. It canceled because the main pup is a German Shepherd and he's a cop. Yeah, I'm not a fan, but I did read the article. I don't know if you're here. You must be here because you sent me this in. Jeremy also goes on to say, happy birthday, Willow. Thanks for your contribution to the Post-Geek Singularity community through your comments, letters, and super chats. We thank you. Here's to Willow. Here is to Willow. This is a nice frosty glass of water, but here is to you. Calvin is here. Pray for Braxton. He's having a tooth pulled and he's sedated. Well, you know what's awesome about getting a tooth pulled? All the bloody gauze. I mean, you got to make sure that Calvin, you know what it is. You wake up with a mouthful of gauze after having good drugs. He gets all the ice cream he wants, right? I always love that when it happened. Like when I had my wisdom teeth pulled, that was a great day. I woke up with my mom over me pulling bloody gauze out of my mouth. She's like, "What can I get you? What can I get you?" I'm thinking, which action figures do I want? Which model kits? Oh, you mean like ice cream? Yeah, ice cream. Okay. Coffee. Haagen-Dazs. It's great. Factual Opinion says, I just finished Deep Space Nine Season 2. The actors who play Cisco and Dax are bad. Wow. They feel wooden and awkward. I don't like Odo. Why the love for him? His grumpy personality makes my eyes roll. My favorite characters so far has to be Julian Bashir and Miles. All I can tell you, Factual Opinion, is you got to stick with it. I mean, if you don't like Dax and you don't like Cisco, I get it. His performance seems a bit stilted. It's very kind of odd, but I guarantee if you stick it out through Season 3 and into Season 4, you will be richly rewarded, sir. Report back. Calvin says, he sends in another tip and says, Braxton's fine. He came out good, and the first thing he watched was him on your show, and he laughed at you messing up. Did I mess up? Well, I'm glad did I mess up? I'm glad that Braxton got to see himself on the internet. There's nothing better than bringing joy to a small child, and I'm happy to do it. Mark C. Sends in a super chat and says, I'm waiting for them to go after the police box in Doctor Who. Oh, man. Let's hope not. Let's hope not. Let's hope cooler heads prevail. Paul Gilmore sends in a tip and says, statistics show that there are more good police than bad, but all we hear about are the bad ones, so that's what people fixate on. I personally think if we did away with all police, it would turn into chaos. There are many times where people needed police for help, of course, and that is true, Paul. It's like painting everybody with a bad brush, and I don't think that's helpful to anyone. You cannot replace one oppression for another. And when people start talking about getting rid of things, we're going to ban this art, we're not going to allow you to see this, we're not going to, or all cops are bad. I'm like, yeah, all those dirty Jews. I've heard that my whole life as a Jew. I've heard people say that the nastiest, and I've always wondered, like, where does that come from? You know, all the people that I knew growing up were nice. I mean, I honestly, I've never met a Jewish person I didn't like. I've met Jewish people I didn't get along with, but as a Jew, people joke I'm a stealth Jew because, I was adopted into a Jewish family. I did find out my biological mother was Jewish, but it's the kind of thing where I never understood. Like, I would listen to people because they wouldn't know I'm Jewish, so I heard a lot of anti-Semitism throughout my life, and I never understood, like, where did that come from? It's because people hear it from other people. It certainly doesn't come from personal experience, or maybe it does, I don't know. But I just don't get it. I never understood that. And like you said, the statistics are there. We tend to get very irrational about certain things that, like, there's a lot less crime and certain things that people think there's a lot more of, but crime has actually gone down, and yet everyone's terrified all the time. It's very strange. It's a very strange thing, and I don't think getting rid of the police is going to help people ultimately in the long run. Paul Gilmore says it's about having balance and weeding out bad apples. Yes. Yes. I agree. I think that's true of anything. And that's why we have to listen. We have to talk to each other. We have to hear each other. And we have to figure out what's real and what's not. So, Jason Bueno sends in a super chat and says, Rob, have you played The Last of Us, and will you play part 2? Yes, I did play The Last of Us, and I finished The Last of Us. It's back here on the shelf somewhere. I am a huge fan of that franchise, and, you know, I will play The Last of Us 2, but I haven't played a video game in years, actually. Grand Theft Auto. After I played every permutation of Grand Theft Auto, the last one, 5, the online. I know they keep adding to it, but I would love to play part 2. I would love to play part 2. Problem with that is I need like a week where I'm not doing anything because you get so immersed in that story. It's it's crazy. Stub McShave says, I think it feels like we're halfway to the world of Demolition Man. Would you consider it to be a dystopian future? Well, yeah, because a dystopian future can still be squeaky clean and nice. I think Demolition Man was a dystopian future because who wants to live that way? I mean, it went way too far in the other direction, and I can see that's. I mean, a lot of people getting rid of any problematic bit of literature, anything that's slightly triggering. How are we going to do that? How are we going to live in that kind of a world? I mean, there's no way. There's no way. Calvin Bose says, with all the problems in the world, we now have to go after my youngest son Hendrickson's favorite show, Paw Patrol. Yeah, and how do you explain to your son that Paw Patrol is somehow problematic because it has a police dog? I mean, again, you're painting all police. Is that another lesson that we want to teach people? You know, once again, it's there's nuance in everything, people. There's nuance. Gerald sends in a tip and says, hey, Rob, I see the Life Force Blu-ray on your shelf. Your thoughts on this cult film? Well, as people know, I really love Life Force and all of its goofiness. I love that Shout Factory finally put out the international version it was on DVD too, but on Blu-ray. It's even longer. It's like 20 minutes longer. So yay us. I think Life Force is terrific. And need I remind you that Elizabeth and I did Life Force as one of our Whining About Movies episodes. So you can go to our sister show, Whining About Movies, and check it out. But yeah, Gerald, I like Life Force. I mean, it's goofy, and it doesn't quite hold together. There's a lot of wackiness in it, and the plot's sort of all over the place. But I like Life Force. Do I think it's a great movie? No. But I like it a lot. I don't think all movies have to be A-list. You know, I wouldn't compare, say, I don't know, Life Force to Robert Zemeckis' Contact anytime soon, but I definitely enjoy it. I do enjoy it. I think it's a lot of fun. Stubble McShave says, do you think there's a bigger chance of virus transmission, 1, in the theater, or 2, during the entrance and exit, or 3, in concession lines? You know, I think especially if you're socially distanced, I don't think, especially if you're wearing a mask, there's much chance of getting an infection sitting in a movie theater. And during entrance and exit, probably not if you can be socially distanced. But at a concession line, yes. Because people are there, they're getting food, they're interacting, and also when you go get your own soda, if it's self-serve, I think I think that could be problematic. Zach Losel said, Rob, my message during Fight Club's whining was to announce Elizabeth's gift arrived for me to send out to your guys' package. It took longer than expected. Oh, well, thank you, Zach. We will look out for that. Thank you. Bob Tozzi says, Solstice did buy a NASCAR sponsorship as next Saturday's 620 NASCAR Xfinity Series race from Talladega is the Unhinged 300. That is hilarious. That is hilarious. But that's some good marketing. Zach says, what's up with that Zoom party, son? That Zoom party is going to be tomorrow at 2 p.m. Pacific time. Elizabeth and I will be here in the Robservatory. We will be rocking and rolling. I think I might be drinking a little whiskey, just between you and I. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, we'll have that Zoom party, and then afterwards we're going to do a whining about movies. So what a party afternoon that's going to be. Elizabeth and I will probably take a nap, but we're going to do whining about movies at 7 tomorrow, and it's Jerry Maguire. So that'll be fun. So that's what's going to happen. And I'll put the Zoom link when I get it from Roberto Suarez. I will put it up somewhere either on the Facebook page, and I'll tweet it out so anybody who wants to go jump into the Zoom party can, which is great. Anonymous says, I am so glad Jack Webb is not alive to see what's happening. Yes, we agree that there are bad cops, but that, I believe, does not speak to the majority. I agree with you. I don't think, people don't go into police work to do bad things. I really don't. I think the job, however, can take its toll, and I think one of the things that cops need, like America needs, is we need health care. We need people that when they need mental health as well as physical health, they can go use it. They can go get it. They can avail themselves of that. Anonymous goes on to say, just for contrast, people now are talking about cops just as they did about Catholic priests in the past. Most are good people. I remember once going to dinner with a priest friend, and a person who didn't know him called him a pedophile. I mean, yeah, it's like, look, there is a big problem. I mean, there's a big problem in the priesthood with that. If you're asking to suppress evolution, which is your sexual impulses, there's a lot of people. What do you do? I don't necessarily think that's the best way to live, but that's not up to me. I'm not a man of that faith, so I can't tell you. But yes, I've actually met many priests in my life that I thought were great people. As far as I know, they are great people. So you're right. A toilet bowl philosopher. Indiana Jones. Brown pants, brown fedora, brown leather jacket. The epitome of adventure. Also, a pretty stupid wardrobe to wear in the Saharan Desert, the Amazon rainforest, and the Peruvian rainforest, and India. Some of the hottest places on Earth. Can't argue with that, toilet bowl philosopher. And as everybody knows, today, ladies and gentlemen, today is the 39th anniversary of the release of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Raiders of the Lost Ark is 39 years old today. Can you believe that? It's true. I can believe it because it's true. Evan Newman is here. Evan Newman sends in a tip and says, Rob, with Hannibal just landing on Netflix, it feels like this is our last best chance to get a renewal of the show. It made it onto Netflix's top 10 TV shows list yesterday, so there's hoping. What do you think? Is a renewal likely? Well, I'll tell you something. There would be no one who would love that more aside from, I would love that more, but I know that Brian Fuller, and I encourage everyone to go look at the interview I did with Brian Fuller, the full-length interview here on the Burnettwork. We did a 90-minute interview. It was great about his thoughts on horror. What he wanted, what he hoped for the fourth season, he told me all about it. He wanted to get the rights to Silence of the Lambs, which they didn't have. And apparently now that his compatriot, his co-creator of Star Trek Discovery, Alex Kurtzman, they're making the Clarice Starling show for CBS. So I don't know what they're going to do, but they don't have the rights. It's so weird. They don't have the rights to Hannibal Lecter. It's bizarre. But I still think that they would come up with a great fourth season of Hannibal. I would love it if they did. Maybe. I mean, if it becomes like, look, that's what Netflix does. They look at it. But again, they also have 3 seasons. And as far as Netflix is concerned, that's exactly what they want. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know. Well, hang on. Since you asked, he doesn't usually get back to me right away. I'm not going to call him, but I will. Let's see. I will. I don't feel comfortable just calling him. Well, I'll send him a message. And I'm saying Hannibal is in Netflix's top 10. Do you think a season 4 pickup will happen? Let's see if he gets back to me during the show. He's probably working. He's writing all the time. So I will keep this up, and hopefully I will get an answer back from Mr. Brian Fuller himself. We shall see. Master and Complainer sends in a tip and says, seems like most superhero powers would suck on its own. What good is super strength if you get injured, or punching a wall with no durability, or the ability to fly with no speed, you'd flutter like a butterfly, or invisibility with no phasing abilities? This is a good point. A lot of philosophy going on here. That's a very good point. I don't know. I don't know how that would work. But you're right. You need sort of a bunch of superpowers in order to make one superpower good or to work. You need a bunch of others, which is a very astute astute observation. I don't know if I have an answer for you. I would imagine, yes, having just one without all the peripheral powers would not help you. But, yeah. Now I'm going to be thinking about this for the rest of the day. Eduardo Cruz sends in a super chat and says, I don't want to or know how to use the 3 seashells. Another Demolition Man joke. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, I can't explain it to you. But you'll want to find out. I don't want to know the answer to this question either, to be honest. I really don't. Claudius is here. Joyx anniversaire, Willow. Shengri. Is this Chinese? Shengri Kuale Willow. I don't even know. Enjoy Rob trying to read French and Chinese. Let me try this again. Joyx Noel. Benex. Joyx anniversaire. Joyx anniversaire Willow. Shengri, I can't even. Shengri, Quali, Willow. Claude, I know you're laughing your ass off right now. And you and Candida are laughing your ass off. And Spencer's laughing too, probably. I enjoy Rob trying to read French and Chinese. Well, hey, thanks for that. I'm always here to be the butt of your jokes, man. Come on. No, secretly I love it. It's funny. If it remains entertaining, it's worth doing, right? That's what I say. Let's see. I got some letters. I just realized I have a letter. I don't. I can't read that. It's not for the audience. Come on, man. Let's see. Somebody was disappointed in me. I can't say who it was, but they told me not to read the letter. It says not for public consumption. Let's see. From yesterday. Let's see which letters I have here. Well, no, I can't. That's something else. There's a lot of letters from yesterday, and I'll just jump into them because I wasn't on. So, Kurt A is here. Man's Inhumanity, the destruction of the great library of Alexandria, science illiteracy, and the West's first female scientist. Greetings, Rob and imagination connoisseurs. You have often said that history is awash with man's inhumanity to man, which is, of course, true. Today, I want to write to you about one such incident that happened about 1,650 years ago. I'm writing about Hypatia, a woman who was born in Alexandria, Egypt around 370 A.D. She was an astronomer, philosopher, physicist, and mathematician. She was the chief librarian at the Library of Alexandria. Yeah, that library. She is considered to be the first female mathematician whose life is recorded to some degree. She was a truly remarkable person with the breadth of accomplishments that could rival any person in any era. And yet, most of the people have never heard of her. At a time when women were treated as property, she moved freely through the male-dominated society. The Suda Lexicon, the 10th century encyclopedia of the Mediterranean world, describes Hypatia as being exceedingly beautiful and fair of form, great beauty. She was also said to have many suitors, all of whom she turned down. The Alexandria of Hypatia's time was ruled by the Romans, but the growing Christian church was consolidating its power and attempting to eradicate pagans. Hypatia was friends with the Roman governor, but because she was a pagan and a proponent of science and learning, she came under the hostile gaze of Cyril, the archbishop of Alexandria. It is in 1415 AD that a fanatical mob of Cyril's parishioners came upon Hypatia. She was dragged off her chariot, her clothes were ripped off, and she was brutally killed when her skin was flayed with abalone shells. Her remains were burned, her life's work was destroyed, and her name forgotten. Cyril was made a saint. Hypatia's death has been discussed in various forms over the centuries. In 1853, Charles Kingsley wrote a novel, Hypatia, a fictionalized account of her life. In 2009, there is the Spanish movie Agora, which I really liked, where Rachel Weisz plays Hypatia. I highly recommend it, especially if you're interested in learning more about Hypatia. In our present time, with its turmoil, disdain for experts, and doubt about basic science, I mean, can you fucking believe that there are people who believe the earth is flat? But I digress, and to be honest, no. No, I can't. I can't believe that there's people that believe the earth is flat. There's a famous quote from the Italian philosopher George Santayana. Satania? I think Satania. Those who cannot learn from history are doomed to repeat it. In closing this letter, I'll end with a quote from Carl Sagan. The glory of the Alexandrian Library is a dim memory. Its last remnants were destroyed soon after Hypatia's death. It was as if the entire civilization had undergone some self-inflicted brain surgery, and most of its memories, discoveries, ideas, and passions were extinguished irrevocably. The loss was incalculable. Thanks for being awesome, Rob. Live long and prosper. Kurt A., a.k.a. Bronze Age Slacker. Look, that's the thing. I just don't understand people who want to destroy ideas. That ideas should be stomped out. I don't get it. I've never understood it. I don't know why. And what I really think is strange too is that when certain ideas or people's thinking is branded to be wrong or contrary, or it's frightening to me, because it shows that people just aren't thinking, and I don't get that, especially when we live in the kind of world we live in, where virtually the modern age is only possible because of forward liberal thinking. And when I say liberal thinking, I'm not talking about political ideology. People who are liberal are open to new ideas. That's basically all it means. Certain ideology have been branded liberals or liberal ideology. I mean, I consider myself, I guess, a classical liberal, but I also find there's value in conservative thought as well. I think all points of view should be considered, but it's, the idea that let's get rid of this, let's get rid of that people can't think for themselves. It's like the idea of, I believe that if people see something that's problematic in art, that they find problematic or racist or whatever, we should be able to deal with that and go, that's problematic or that's racist. We shouldn't, burn it. Why should we burn it? We should contextualize it. We should explain, use it as the beginning of a conversation, not the end of a conversation. And it terrifies me that we live in a society where that isn't the case. This one comes from Adam Blue. Hey, Rob, I wrote a short story, and I figured I'd share it here with the Post-Geek Singularity. It's nothing original, just lining up real-world events and having some fun. The title of this story is Death Plan. January 19th, 2017. Mr. Trump, please have a seat. A shadowy figure points to a chair nearby in a small, dark room. Donald Trump, about to be inaugurated, was required to go over classified information. Trump has a seat and looks around. What's with the lights? Mr. Trump. Another shadowy figure emerges from the corner of a room and produces a file folder. Trump grabs it, opens it, and flips through. Do we have a video on this? Trump asks. The two figures glance at each other. One speaks. Mr. Trump, I'm about to disclose classified and somewhat shocking information. We understand your agreements with the Russians, so we're not afraid of leaks. Trump tilts his head. The Russians love me. He turns to the other figure. They're good people. Mr. Trump, UAPs, or as you may know them, UFOs, are real. They are piloted by interdimensional beings, but we have no other information. We have a division of the Air Force solely responsible for collecting and observing all activities of UAPs. Aliens, of course, aliens. I already knew that. Remember, the Russians like me, Trump smirks. Along with that is technology found from a UAP dug up in an archaeological dig. We've been pretty successful with this technology, but we cannot let other nations obtain and leverage it. Trump shows off a confused look. Why can't we be friends? Russians are good people, too. But Mr. Trump, there's more. Some of these archaeological digs have confirmed an earlier advanced civilization existed on Earth and were quite large, 7 to 12 feet on average. Trump looks up inquisitively. And they aren't here today, are they? They must not have been that smart if they had to be that tall. How would they have time to think? The figures look at each other confused. Mr. Trump, our ancestors no longer exist due to an extermination stipulation brought on by their ancestors. The figure's speech is cut off by his counterpart figure, signaling by waving his hand. Mr. Trump, we have a plan that needs to be put in place immediately, which is why we had you run as a Republican. Based on what Mr. Smith was trying to say, there's an age-old tradition that needs to be held in place in order for humans to keep their place here on Earth. I clap after every meal, Mr. Trump says seriously. Mr. Trump, there's way too many people on this planet, and we need to thin the herd. N1H1 wasn't successful because of the democratically run White House, but this time we'll be able to extend the 1918 attempt. The figure continues. A virus will be released in the fall of 2019. This will ensure a decrease in the population growth around the world, but also a decrease in Medicaid and Social Security spending locally. The other figure steps forward, but the real reason is to appease the UAPs. When they want something, they tend to abduct people, and if we want to be safe from their uncontrollable disasters, like an asteroid or worldwide flood, we need to do what is asked of us. Did you get this from Twitter? If so, I already knew this probably. Trump nods, sticking out his bottom lip. No, the Emerald Tablets. It's Sumerian. I think Sumerian might be the name of a hotel I own. Trump looks back at the other figure. I own many hotels, many fine, luxurious hotels. Well, Mr. Trump, just be aware that you will be vaccinated sometime after we release the virus. I don't need a vaccine. My health is 100% satisfactory, just like this cheeseburger is satisfying. Trump swallows a whole cheeseburger. The end. Well, Adam, that sounds a lot like X-Files conspiracy thriller to me, or I think that I'm in. I'd like to believe that's true. The UAs, the aliens, whatever you want to call them, the extra-dimensional beings. I hope they show up, man. I really do. I think we could use them. But thank you. Very creative. Thank you for your story. Emil Johansson is here. Uh-oh. Emil. What I don't like about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I really like Marvel movies. Ever since, like Captain America or something, I was really into their universe. But I have gripes with it. Things I dislike. Not necessarily things that I need to have fixed, but I have issues with certain elements. And to not seem like I'm blind to them, I want to discuss them here. The main gripes I have is that, for example, the sequels never complete the character arcs they set up. This is not bad. I don't disagree with you. It frustrates me, for example, Iron Man 1 was awesome, but the sequels felt like just filler arcs because they are part of a bigger universe and they don't really stand well on their own. Iron Man 2 is a setup movie, and Iron Man 3 only lived on the hype of Avengers. I want complete character arcs, a beginning, middle, and an end, but I'll never get that because characters pop in and out of multiple movies, and sometimes those movies have an impact and sometimes they don't. I never felt like Captain America got a proper ending. It was a good first movie and a good second movie, and then they besmirched his character by making him half a villain in the third movie, and all the character progress he got in the other movies was a cool moment where he lifted Mjolnir in Endgame. You didn't, well, I did like the kind of closure where he got to go back in time and live out the life. So he wasn't Captain America. He found happiness. And it didn't make sense to me that he had to move on from Peggy Carter and Winter Soldier, but then he couldn't in Endgame. Like, it was a nice ending for sure, but it didn't make sense to me where his character had been going all the time. The other gripe I have is that the humor can get a bit too heavy sometimes. I don't mind it overall. I enjoy the humor because the writers are good at it. They make you laugh, but they also make you not take the movies too seriously, which I think could be a mistake. Thor Ragnarok could have been the most dramatic movie ever with everything that the character lost, but instead it was the biggest joke in the MCU. But come on, man. Wasn't it fun? It's kind of like a Walt Simonson comic. That seems to be working for them, but sometimes I think maybe they should actually tone it down anyway and let the moments of the movie sink in a bit, if not just for the audience to wait for the next gag. But, you know, look where it goes after that. It gets pretty serious. The third gripe I have is something I share with John Campea. I don't like the overuse of fake deaths. When the ending of Infinity War happened, I felt nothing. I wasn't even sure if the people who got dusted actually died, and it really had no impact, and that's not good. I also think that filler-type stories kind of ruins the investment you have in the MCU overall. Because, for example, Iron Man 1 had a very clear sense of morality and a goal in it. You had a relatable character go through a journey of self-discovery and also do something that changed the world he was in. But in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, for example, regardless of the fact that they saved the galaxy a second time without people even knowing about it, that movie could have been blipped and nothing would have changed. I never felt like the movie had a clear sense of a goal in it. It just felt like some random adventure, and the only reason I was invested in it was because it felt mandatory to watch, and it was an MCU movie. But didn't you think Guardians of the Galaxy 2 had a lot of interesting things to say about family? I mean, you had Gamora and Nebula. They were dealing with one another. Then you had, of course, Star-Lord dealing with his father, Kurt Russell. I mean, and there was Rocket dealing with his issues. I thought it was interesting. Another problem I have is that everything must be canon. Like, I don't mind them changing the comics a bit to chase the success of the films, but when it comes to the TV shows, I hate it when they try and make them canon, regardless of there being no sense in the connections at all. I'm still interested in the Disney Plus shows and how they can further the universe, but I never wanted Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to be canon or Daredevil to meet Spider-Man, etc. I dislike Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but, for example, Daredevil was awesome, and to force that Defenders universe into the MCU would diminish its greatness. I agree. I wouldn't mind if the same actor popped up in some movie, but I never needed the Battle of New York to be mentioned in that show, and I think it just hamstrings the makers of those shows if they feel they have to play in the same sandbox as the MCU. Those are my issues. I still really like it, though. I hope you like this letter, and I didn't make too many grammatical errors. No, not too many. I don't... Look, is the MCU perfect? No. Is it without... It's certainly got, you can criticize it, but I think overall for 23 movies, it is a staggering film series. Staggering. And it works really well. And I just think it's wildly entertaining. I think, on one hand, I guess because I've read all the comics, so if they make changes, I've already got all the comic stuff in my head anyway. But I think it's, as a fantasy series goes, I think they've done a pretty good job and been pretty consistent with their own universe, with their own cinematic universe. And I think that's pretty neat. I've got to give it up for them for doing that. Let's see. This one comes from Mike Weber. How do, Captain Rob? Oh, please refer to me by the moniker Herr Weber. Oh, Herr Weber. Herr Weber. Okay, Herr Weber. How do, Captain Rob? As an adoptive Gen Xer, just 1 year and 2 days your junior, I share many of your affinities of geekdom, be they television, films, music, or other pop culture of that bygone era of our youth, and for that matter, in this current day. I have been delighted by your content as a daily beacon of insight and perspective since your days on Heroes, as the super sweaty himself, John Schnepp, brought me more in touch with how, in the YouTube pundit space of current geek culture, I feel, and remember the many perspectives of my own pop culture experiences. I was very surprised after his passing that you were not present at all on Collider. I was a little, to be honest, but was overjoyed that you suddenly reemerged on my radar on the John Campea show, in which due time allowed me to get a daily dose via your Robcasts. Sir, thank you for all the insightful episodes and new shows like Whining About Movies. I love all your content. I really get a kick when you have to explain, for example, Eagles. I keep meaning to move these things, but I mean, to explain why you have aluminum metal bells for your 22-inch Eagle model, people are like, why do you have that? What are those for? Didn't it come with plastic ones already? And I'm like, yes, but they're not metal. Anyway, I really get a kick when you explain, for example, Eagles from Space 1999, as, from my viewpoint, who the hell remembers pleading as a kid to get that toy? Oh, I pleaded. Or the spectacular opening of the show, which would give amazing action shots of the upcoming episode itself in the intro credits. On a recent episode of Lucan and ISIS was brought up. And I expected you to say Almighty ISIS, but alas, that memory may not be as strong as a 70s reference of Electrocoms might do. I have to tell you, whenever I say Almighty ISIS, I feel like I'm being self-serving because it references something that happened in Free Enterprise, and I feel like I've got to give that a rest. I'm also a big Trek fan, not as knowledgeable as yourself, but I was there opening day for the motion picture, Star Trek II, Star Trek III, and Star Trek IV. I did also see Poltergeist that weekend, just saying, along with other releases. I attended many Star Trek conventions in the 80s, along with many Doctor Who cons. I love that era of no payment for autographs and a good real-time chat with the guests. I align strongly with all of your views, especially on films and TV from the 70s and 80s and so on. Back then, there was Trek versus Star Wars. Infant the term nerd took a while to catch on. Honor and pride with that term for me and what I enjoyed. And geek, that came later. It's all the same. The stuff you love and devour, no matter others' distaste for such morsels. I love working at a movie theater back in the mid to late 80s in a new kind of multi-theater environment, which meant I got to watch films 2 or 3 times a day on 6 screens, and the joy of cleaning theaters while closing credits and music ran was actually a joy. Learning the names of the cast and crew, especially the EFX crews. Being in the front of the theater goers at the end of Fatal Attraction 4 times a day for weeks. Kneeling down and watching 200 people all jump in the dark was a joyful bonus that day. Rocking out to the closing theme of Gremlins. Learning the final dance of Cotton Club so that a friend and I could dance next to patrons in the dark, and they were clueless as to our presence as we mimicked the silver screen imagery. A real hoot. And being the only people in the theater back in the day that saw the end credit scene from Ferris Bueller. Never any patrons in the auditorium at that point. Only on VHS did that become popular. I loved all the 80s flicks as I saw most of them first run. The access for free to other theaters that had different flicks on the screens was pay dirt. Free films on the big screen anywhere nearby, golden. I don't mean to be so self-indulgent, but I just wanted to share a bit of insight in so much as I really dig it when you make slight references or pump up currently not known films from that era by your viewers. To that era, I say, plate of shrimp. Plate of shrimp. Shrimp, shrimp. Plate of shrimp. You find one in every car. You'll see. I won't even say what that's from. Regarding recent events via the tweet, I say, in critical moments, men sometimes see exactly what they wish to see. Much love, sir, to the sommelier of cinema. Cheers, and to the hope one day we can tip a few brews together and chat up a good time. Well, what a nice, lovely letter. Thank you for sending it in, Mike. Absolutely. Normally, I like to spend Comic-Con in San Diego halfway inebriated during the day. You know, that's why I like to go to the Wired Cafe, and maybe we'll be able to do that, but not this year, which bums me out. Stephen Goggin is here. Dear Rob, I have another question. I enjoy watching the credits at the end of a movie, as I know there are a lot of folks involved in the making of a movie, so I like seeing who does what. One of the credits sections I am curious about and have no idea what these credits mean, so I thought I would ask. What are best boy grips or dolly grips and rigging grips, and how do they affect the making of a movie? All the best, Stephen Goggin, the Irishman in Somerset. Okay, so grips are part of the electric department. Grips are people. This is something a lot of people don't get. So how can I explain this? So when you're making a movie, when you're on set, there's lights and cameras, there's electricity that has to be constantly moved around. And you're constantly moving the lights and the grips. I mean, they might be hanging lights in the ceilings, they might all over the place. So the grips are really people that are working with the lighting team, the cinematography team, to set up all the lights. And depending if you're in a big space, you might have to have 30 lights set up. And so what the grips do is they set up all those lights, and they're constantly running cables and making sure things are grounded, and they're invaluable, because when you're making a movie, basically what you're doing is you don't just set up one setup for the day. You might have 40 setups, and each one of those setups need different lighting structures or different lighting. You might be on 5 different sets in one day. All of those sets have to be lit. So you basically have a team of people that are constantly moving and shifting around lights based on the needs of a scene. And they're technicians, they're artists, they're amazing people. Now, a dolly grip, so a dolly is what a camera dollies on. So a dolly can be an actual very heavy piece of equipment that usually has 4 wheels on it. You can sit on it, but it's very, very heavy because it has to keep a camera stable. So it's machined and it's made of metal. It's a precision machine because it also has to be able to move without having a bump in it. You have to be able to get perfect shots. So there's dolly track, there's all kinds of stuff that goes along, not just with the dolly itself, but you have to lay track. Like, let's say you want to do a shot where the camera moves 30 feet. Not only do you lay down just track and put it together, the track has to be stabilized. So they usually put wooden wedges underneath, and everything has to be perfect. So there are grips that specialize for with dollies, and that's basically what you're dealing with when you're talking about the grips and electrical department. These are guys and girls, men and women, that are constantly moving equipment around and making sure that it works from shot to shot to shot. It can be back-breaking work depending on how big the shoot is. So that's basically what they are. And good question though. So and also gaffers. Gaffers are again same kind of thing. Gaffers work directly mostly with the cinematographer too, and so they know where lights are going. It's all part of the same team really, and that's why it's so important to have these guys, because they're not just electrical dudes. They understand not just how things work, but they understand where things. Cinematographers and their entire department, the entire camera and grip and electrical department. These are people that understand literally. How do you paint with light? Because if you think about it, like a set is just a set. But to make movies look the way they look, it's not even about where people have lights on them. They're putting lights, they're casting light and shadow in the background. They're doing all kinds of things. They are literally painting a set with light. It's very interesting when you're on a movie set and you go onto the art department just finishes a set that isn't lit. They've just got the lights on. And it looks... it looks flat. It's just a room that's been painted, even if the art department has come in and dressed the whole set. But it's not until the light starts being painted over that set, and your entire camera crew and the grip and electrical department come in, and that's when the magic starts to happen, and it's great. Hi, Rob, and the Post-Geek Singularity. This is Dean Mikatich. Says, your channel is about pop culture and the love of movies and tries not to go into politics. However, given what is going on in the United States at the moment, I have to touch on this subject, so I'll understand if you don't want to read this letter out. I'll read this letter out. There have been calls to have the police forces in America defunded and for all police shows and movies to be removed. How will defunding police forces be helpful? Rob, you have stated on your show that the police do a lot more than we see on our TV shows and movies. You asked who are going to investigate crimes such as child abuse or domestic violence. No police officer will be able to do so, as they are no longer funded and therefore no longer able to be paid for the work that they do. It does not matter what job you do, you still need to be paid in order to pay your own bills and buy food to eat. Does this mean that America will become a lawless land like it was in the early days of the Wild West? No, that's not going to happen. It'll most likely be your own armed forces having to take on the job, a job that 99% of them are not trained to do. Even their own military police are not trained to do half the jobs a civilian police officer does. Can you really see the FBI taking over? No, they don't just have the manpower. It could go to a private security firm, but do you really want a company enforcing your laws when they have to answer to a stockholder? You'll be entering the world of RoboCop if you go down that road. As for all police shows and movies to be removed, did this also include all the shows and movies where the star is not white? Just a blank ban on everything? What about the shows that show criminal life? Should we allow them to stay? That's the one thing you know what? I'm like, does that mean that Breaking Bad and The Sopranos, I mentioned that the other day, go away? Like, it's so funny to me that let's get rid of cop shows, but shows about criminals, they're okay. You can't ban one without the other. You can't take away beloved shows and films, but you can change current shows. The question is, how do you do it and keep viewers coming back? If a police show or film was to be more realistic, were not every crime solved in the course of a day, how do you keep your viewer entertained? I can understand why a show like Cops was canceled. I saw this in the 90s, and I was surprised it was still on. But when I saw it, it just showed the police taking down criminals that were fighting back. it never actually shows the day-to-day life of a police officer. It never showed an investigation of a crime from start to finish, even if this meant the crime went unsolved. Cops was not a good show for portraying American police officers. I do not want to take away from the tragedy of George Floyd and all the other deaths from people being in police custody, but all the police forces in the states are not manned by all whites. They're a mix of people of all colors, of all races, religions, and sexual orientations. You can't paint them all with the same brush as the few officers that appear in the news for the wrong reasons. It's all good protesting about these incidents, but when it leads to rioting, what changes do they bring? Not much. What has really changed in LA since the LA riots? Going by what I'm seeing now, nothing has changed at all. Same resentment has been bubbling under the surface and erupted again. If you want to make real change, don't go and riot. Do something that will make a difference. Work in a system, even if the system is broken. You have to be in it to fix it. I agree with that, actually. Join the police force, run for a political position, and make that change, and that will really matter. Kind regards, Dean Mikitich. Well, Dean, look, I agree with you. You know, it's you can't just get rid of it all. But yeah, I think that you got to change the system, and people have to be involved. It's hard. It's hard. It's easy. Revolution is easy. Creating a society is hard. And I think that, I have to say, having lived through the LA riots, after the LA riots, there was, even for a long time, there was a serenity that came over the city that I didn't feel in the first 6 years that I lived here. Or actually the first 4 years I lived here. And I think it did get better. And I think real change now, we've got people listening and people are aware. It really depends on them to what kind of change are they going to make. And what, you think there's not going to be movies about this? They'll be making movies about this for a long time to come. And I think, look, the best way that we can present information to people is in movies and television, because it gets them, they're a captive audience. When people sit down in a movie theater, they're there. Tell them a good story. So, yeah. Oh, hail Robert Meyer Burnett. This comes from, let me say who this comes from. This comes from Chris Ondarin. Chris Ondarin. Oh, hail Robert Meyer Burnett, first of his name, the unwarped breaker of synths, supreme collector of 4Ks and Blu-rays, and the Lord Protector of the 7 geekdoms. I have been a proud member of the Post-Geek Singularity ever since the inception of your YouTube channel after your departure from Collider, due to the level-headed and fairly objective perspectives that you've displayed on both of the above-mentioned platforms or mediums. The recent events which occurred in the U.S. and spilled over at the international level reflect the continuous ideological polarization of society and force me to contemplate upon the release of my most anticipated movie of the year, Dune. I am in the process of reading Frank Herbert's entire Dune saga, which I plan to finish by the time the movie premieres in December, provided the pandemic is significantly neutralized and everything goes back to normal. You should check out the paperback covers available for the edition printed in my home country, Romania. I love that. Here, wait, I'm going to put this. Ooh. I'm going to put, these are the covers of the Romanian Dune. Let's check it out. They're absolutely jaw-dropping. Dune weaves a tapestry including the overarching themes of religious and secular fanaticism, social engineering, technological setback, generational fallibility, cycles of oppression, the corruptive nature of power, all of these accompanied by an anti-messianic rhetoric and governance agnosticism. Woo! This is why I think that it is extremely important for Denis Villeneuve's adaptation to keep its release date, because it puts a mirror in front of people from both sides of the political spectrum and determines for us to have thought-provoking conversations about the limits of our different system of values. When Vanity Fair and Empire Magazine published the first look photos of the movie in April and May of this year, the feedback and the reactions of the Dune connoisseurs were predominantly optimistic. However, I noticed a lot of commentators on YouTube and Twitter, the ones with obvious competing ideological affiliations, who were bitching and moaning as usual that either the movie is too diverse and therefore woke, or not diverse enough because it didn't cast Middle Eastern actors as Fremen due to what is, in their opinion, the problematic nature of the source material. The last group of skeptics also complain that Dune has profoundly racist, anti-Islamic, and pro-colonialist undertones, which makes me wonder if they managed to read the books carefully or if they're issuing these bad faith arguments in a deliberate manner. Quinn from Ideas of Ice and Fire has posted numerous, by the way, I love his channel, has posted numerous videos where he explains why the Dune series of novels is not a glorification of messianic figures, but I suppose these two factions didn't get the memo. I mean, without ruining for anyone, Paul Atreides, didn't turn out well, that one. I'm looking forward to seeing the movie, and I believe it will be an unforgettable cinematic experience, but I also predict it will piss off a lot of progressive and conservative critics because of the core message of the story that underlines the destructive nature of the political and religious extremes. I don't know what the box office performance of this particular movie will be. Maybe Warner Brothers is counting on Tenet and Wonder Woman 84 to make a crazy amount of money to ease the pressure. But I hope it will do well enough for the studio to greenlight the adaptation of the second part of the book and the adaptation of Dune Messiah and Children of Dune in order to complete the story arc of the Atreides dynasty. What are your thoughts on the impact of the current political climate on the premiere of Dune in December, and will it be financially viable to sustain future sequels? All the best from Romania. Undaran, I think it's Undaran. Undaran, Chris Undaran. Undaran. Chris Undaran. Well, Chris, thank you for writing this letter. Everything you said is correct. And what I don't understand, what really bothers me is when people slap labels on something that this is problematic or whatever, it's very unnuanced. And problematic for whom? As an astute reader, I don't find Dune to necessarily be anti-Islamic. I mean, the Fremen are literally based on Islamic tradition, and I don't think it's problematic. And the idea, I mean, what's so interesting is Dune, the planet Dune, is not Arrakis. I mean, Dune is Arrakis. Dune is not Earth. Arrakis is not Earth. So you can cast actors whoever you want. We're not casting. I mean, we're. I mean, in the future, I think humanity is going to be mixed anyway. I mean, we're all going to be mixed. Any pure blood, any weird people that are like these pure. I need the Aryan purified white race. There isn't going to be any more. There won't be a white race in the year 10,191. We will have that ship will have sailed. We will have intermixed. We'll be beautiful. The best of human genetic stock will rise to the top. So in 10,000 years, I don't think that we're going to have those kinds of issues. So yeah, you can bitch and moan, but I think that's, again, if you haven't read the books, like if you're gonna talk about Dune being problematic and you haven't read the books, I think you're the one that's problematic, you know. And Ideas of Ice and Fire is a great YouTube channel, by the way. And there are many, he's done many different videos about various things, and his Dune videos are really interesting, and I totally would recommend them. But how do I think it's going to do? Look, I think that because of all of this kind of unrest and everything that's gone on, it might be the most helpful thing that a Dune movie could ever have going for it. I think, in a way, this is the perfect time to have Dune come out. Hopefully the opening of movie theaters will go well. But I think it's the perfect time. Whether it's going to make its money back, I don't know. I mean, I think the one thing about Dune now is if you don't know the story, you haven't read the books, I think because we live in a post-Game of Thrones world, that this kind of story is much more palatable to audiences. They'll get it. You know, they'll understand. Like, I've talked to a lot about how there's a project I've wanted to make for over 30 years that I'm working on. I'm actively developing. Well, I'm storyboarding the script, and my vision for the whole film is sort of coming together. And I don't think it would have been. It's fantastical, and I don't think 30 years ago an audience would have bought into what it's about. And I think now they will. And I think that we now, living in the post-Geek Singularity the way we do, I think there's never been a better time to release a movie like Dune. And yeah, it's going to have, there's political ideologies that are, and there's stuff going on, conspiracies in the story, obviously, as you know, the rise of messianic figures and all of that. There are people that are going to label it, but it's so silly to me because Dune's been around since 1965. Anybody can pick it up and read it. Its themes have been mulled over for a long, long, long time. And James Herbert, I always say that, Frank Herbert's 6 Dune novels, Dune, Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, God Emperor of Dune, Heretics of Dune, and Chapter House Dune are all, you can read them and you know what it's all about. The story spans thousands of years, and it's not ultimately about the good Messiah who rises to liberate the Fremen people. It's and that's what's funny when people think that's what the story is. Oh, it's about a Messiah. Well, yep, it is. But I think that now, at least I choose to believe that now is the best time for the story to be told. And I'm hoping, look, it doesn't have the creamy goodness of, say, a Star Wars movie in terms of the getting all that it's not as sugary. It's a little bit more, it's more of a 4-course meal than it is a romp. And it requires a lot of thinking and understanding. I mean, it's a very talky thing. The script has a lot of talking in it. It's got action too. But Dune is a story it presupposes your audience is going to be smart and that they're going to be able to sit down and enjoy this. And I think in the world we live in now, I think they will. And I think having a very interesting cast from all over the world to be in this movie is really going to bring us something special. So I have all the hope in the world for this movie. I really do. Ian Samuels writes in and says, Rob and fellow Robservationists, new Trek, Star Trek Discovery. When we got the first teaser, a shot of the ship leaving a docking bay inside of an asteroid, and the fact that it was based between Enterprise and the original series, I was excited for new Trek on TV. Turned out the Discovery was as welcome as any STD, so its initials meant it was well named. With the JJ verse, of which we are extremely aware that you are a big fan, which has since been referred to as the Kelvin timeline, and everything else is the Prime timeline. In both timelines, it's established that the Klingons gained their first cloaking device as part of the trade with the Romulans, but then comes the Discovery pilot, in which we're expected to believe the Klingons discovered an ancient Klingon warship, one that not only has a cloaking device, but also weaponry and shields and general technology in advance of anything even seen in the Next Generation. Also, due to what was established in the JJ verse, even the Federation ships, which should be something between the NX class of Enterprise and the Constitution class of the 1701, but instead, because the flashy JJ verse films were given Federation ships, which also seem to show levels of technology in advance of anything from TNG, so Discovery does not work in either the Kelvin timeline or the Prime timeline, or in fact, with these issues and poor writing, it doesn't even work as Star Trek. Then we got Picard, which we've also been made very aware of your feelings. For myself and my wife, it was entertaining and made part of our Friday night date night. At first, it was good to see the old man again, but the first couple of episodes we enjoyed. But as the plot played out, I began to feel uncomfortable. I did not like the fact that they had borrowed plots from Battlestar Galactica and Mass Effect. It sunk to new lazy lows of writing. It stank of lazy writing. Then we got to the final space battle between over 200 new Romulan warbirds and more than 200 Federation ships. It was a space battle that was teased at, and it was great to see Will Riker, but we didn't get it, and it was also a sign of further laziness. The Romulan ships, the same ship just copied and pasted 200 times, and the Federation ships, again, same ship copied and pasted 200 times. The final scene of the crew on a ship gave a small amount of hope for the second season, and with the addition of Mark Bernardin as lead writer, Deep Space Nine with the Dominion War, the fleet they put together was unbelievable. Galaxy and Nebula-class ships, as well as the Defiant, but with refitted Miranda and Excelsior-class ships, old ships that were needed to make up the numbers. Just having the same ship copied and pasted 200 times felt fake. It felt unreal. As an additional little fun fact, there's a connection between Back to the Future Part 3 and The Rise of Skywalker. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's there. In the first Back to the Future, Marty asks Doc if the time machine runs on normal gasoline, and Doc announces that it is in fact run on plutonium. At the end of the first film and the beginning of the second, we see Doc return from the future with a Mr. Fusion, insisting that he needs fuel, which is in the form of rubbish. In Part 3, a major plot device is that they cannot use the DeLorean as it needs gasoline that hasn't been invented. This was despite the fact that it had been established in the previous 2 movies that gasoline was not required. In The Rise of Skywalker, fuel was used as a plot device, which had never been mentioned in any part of the Star Wars universe previously, so both franchises used fuel as a plot device, which was not something that they had mentioned. The plot used in Rise of Skywalker was most likely borrowed from the new Battlestar Galactica, as in the first episode after the pilot, the ships could only make short jumps using the FTL drive, as they did not have the fuel for an extended FTL run. This was an extremely dull plot point that was supposed to build tension, but instead, for me, it bored the hell out of me and helped put me off the series. Yeah, well, I don't disagree with that. Now, let me go back to what you guys were all saying. If you were saying stuff I don't even know. Let's see. Let me go back. Paul in Long Beach sends in a tip and said, actually, Rob, I want you to read the letter, all of it, including the part that was meant to be private. Really? Okay. I could do that if you really want me to. Okay, this letter comes from Paul in Long Beach. I'm going to read the whole thing. Paul in Long Beach, usually one of the funniest men in the Post-Geek Singularity. Not for the audience. I'm writing this through the website because I'd like it read. Obviously, when it's between us, I've gone directly. But if you don't, I'll understand. But since you brought it up on the show the other day, I thought it was appropriate. If you'd like to discuss it further, feel free to email me at my personal shot. I have to admit, Rob, in this particular case, I'm disappointed in you. Allow me to begin this letter by stating very confidently, besides a couple of dozen bearded, basement-dwelling douchebags in Portland, whom probably are still breastfeeding, there is no organized group named Antifa. It's a straw man, a fantasy, a cudgel, utilized to install fear. As someone who used to work in journalistic sense, as I did, in a journalistic sense, you should know better than to trust anonymous posts on Medium. These can be written by any Joe Blow from Idaho, and probably were. And then he sends a article. Let me make this clear. I don't support this particular protest in any way, but you're old enough to remember the battle in Seattle and should know better. Many of Seattle's great cultural institutions were founded on basic protest. Go ahead and look at your own hometown newspaper, the Seattle Times. Nothing about Antifa or violence or weaponry. Seriously, if there's one thing Antifa has been known for, it's having outdoor movies, art spaces, and live music. There have been multiple Facebook posts about how Antifa was supposedly coming onto your suburban neighborhood to take over, yet they seemingly never show up, and I wonder why. Oh, wait a minute. I know why. It's because they don't exist. Now, I completely understand that in these weird times, many people don't trust the news media. To those whom will say that they don't, that's fine. I hope you'll trust your own Department of Justice. Out of 51 arrests and indictments so far, want to know how many were linked to Antifa? 0. None. Zip. Nah fucking da. In fact, white supremacists have been arrested for attempting to incite violence, but no Antifa. If you and others in the Post-Geek Singularity want to believe in the boogeyman, feel free. Should you, then I will say that I have a closet full of Saddam Hussein's missing weapons of mass destruction to sell you. They're sitting next to Barack Obama's Kenyan birth certificate and all of my George Soros paycheck stubs and the cure for blindness. They're all for sale. Paul in Long Beach. Hey, man, I don't disagree with you. I mean, I was making fun of the Roz, the warlord. I said that President Trump had pardoned Snake Plissken and was sending Snake Plissken to the free zone in Seattle. Yeah, look, I don't necessarily disagree with what you've written here, but I also think that there are groups of people that are very vocal and online and whatever they call themselves. There's still people that go to do things where they're not exactly honorable. But you're right. These protests, if you look at what's going on in Seattle, you know, it is fairly peaceful. It is fairly peaceful, and we'll see how it all plays out. So I hope it plays out okay. I hope it is all okay. So yes, so there you go. I read the whole letter, Paul. Bunyan Snipe says, losing my Dinky Eagle as a child was devastating. Oh, man, and they were expensive, too. The metal Dinky Eagles were expensive for a kid's toy back then. It was rough. Calvin says, Calvin Bose sends in a tip and says, in answer to your question, Braxton decided himself he didn't want to watch Picard after the beheading. Wow. When he watches Trek, it's the J.J. Abrams films and before. He doesn't like Discovery or Picard. I always knew I liked Braxton. Mark C. sent a super chat and says, we lost the great Denny O'Neil today. He was 81. Denny O'Neil is one of the most legendary comic creators in history, and he passed away today at 81. You can't even begin I can't even begin to go into his many accomplishments, but during the 70s, for instance, he was one of the writers of Batman. He was an editor. He inspired so many of the people that you know. Bill Sienkiewicz wrote a really nice tribute to Denny O'Neil today on his Facebook page. Yes, Denny O'Neil passed away at 81, and he was responsible for so many different comics. Green Lantern, Green Arrow in the 70s. I mean, he was an amazing comic writer and an amazing editor, and apparently a mensch. I never had the opportunity to ever meet Denny O'Neil, but he passed away at 81, and he is one of the most legendary figures in the comic industry. So, Mark, thank you for mentioning that. I should have mentioned that already. John Suntress is here for the Word Balloon podcast. He says, thanks for chatting last night with connection issues. Yeah, it was weird. I was happy to chat. From the Word, we did a live Word Balloon podcast. I got to rant and rave about Star Trek, which is always fun. And it was a really good conversation. I really enjoyed it. So if you haven't seen any of the Word Balloon podcasts, it's one of the great pop culture podcasts on the web. Go check it out. It's good. Damo Davies is here. He says, greetings from the United Kingdom. Happy birthday, Willow. I went to see Tim Burton's Batman for the 30th anniversary last year and Alien. My pleasure on the Alien and Aliens double tap is the theatrical for Alien and the director's cuts for Alien. Okay. So there are both director's cuts and theatrical cuts of both Alien and Aliens, and like you, Damo, I prefer the original cut of Alien, but I really do enjoy the director's cut of Aliens better, although I don't think all of the additions, I think they spent too much time with the smart guns, but I do like everything else. Mr. Derringer sends in a super chat and says, Ghibli alert. When we're getting Ghibli here, that I got from John Campia. Doom Patrol Season 2 trailer just dropped. Ooh, I haven't seen that yet. I'll have to watch that. Absolutely. Damo Davies goes on and says, I was absolutely devastated that Pierce Brosnan didn't get his 5th Bond movie after the So-So Die Another Day. I liked Quentin Tarantino's idea of Brosnan doing an on-the-nose Fleming with him in the director's chair. It's a shame that we didn't get that. I agree. I like Pierce Brosnan as Bond. I would like to have seen more of him. Damo Davies goes on and says, the thing people tend to overlook with Jack Nicholson's Joker is, yes, he is clownish, the clue is in the name, but also violently unpredictable, and that makes him terrifying. You would be lured into a false sense of security, and then he would shoot you dead. Yes, he would. Yes, I totally agree with you. Damo goes on and says, sorry to take up all your time, but I would like to rank my 5 favorite British directors. The Scott brothers, Ridley and Tony, Danny Boyle, Christopher Nolan, and of course the GOAT British director is Alfred Hitchcock. How would you rank my list? I think that's a pretty great list of British directors. Absolutely. I think it's great. But, there's a lot of great British directors out there. I mean, Michael, the Powell and Pressburger movies, how can you've got to talk about Michael Powell. He's one of the great directors. I mean, I think there's so many. You could line up so many great British directors, and it would be tough. I'd be hard-pressed. But I think that's a pretty legendary list that you came up with, so I will grant you that. Exhausted Claudius is here. Rob, I'm exhausted. It's exhausting. It's exhausting listening to protesters, commentators, journalists who can't even hang on. It's exhausting listening to protesters, commentators, journalists who cannot even remember Anthropology 101. I am exhausted listening to the inevitable backlash looking to find fault with poorly interpreted policy proposals. I, too, am exhausted. I am exhausted. Rob, I earned or wasted a BA in social science from Chapman University. I took classes in social conflict, anthropology, and politics. Talking about ethnicity, class, and race is incredibly difficult because it is mostly sociological. I'll speak for myself. As a Jamaican American, I do not want to defund the police, censor Gone with the Wind, remove the word police from the TARDIS, or discontinue Paw Patrol. These discussions are a frustrating distraction. Hear, hear, sir. They are a total frustrating distraction. And I'll speak for myself. Oh, wait, you already said that. Wait, Honest Asian Guy is here in the middle of all this. I'm going to go, Claude, while you're finishing, Honest Asian Guy sends in a tip and says, "Hi, Rob. Well, I'll come back to Honest Asian Guy. Let me read you again. So I'll speak for myself. As a Jamaican American, I do not want to defund the police, censor Gone with the Wind, remove the word police from the TARDIS, or discontinue Paw Patrol. These discussions are a frustrating distraction. Yes, the real work requires education, legislation, and advocacy. Real change requires all-day school, universal childcare, refunding arts, sports, and other after-school programs in our socioeconomically disadvantaged neighborhoods. Oh my God, hear, hear. These are the solutions to the problems or country, not just African Americans. Black Lives Matter doesn't speak for me no more than Jesse Jackson does. This is not to take away from the brave men and women of all backgrounds peacefully protesting against injustice." I like that. And you're right. I mean, I think what Claude just hit the nail on the head. You know, you watch interviews. There's Prager University put out a video that has people like Denzel Washington and Anthony Mackie talking about and Morgan Freeman, which is a contrary narrative to what's going on now, but it's amazing. Claude, dude, I don't know what to say to this. Other than I thank you. But what my thought was that what Claude was saying and what I've been saying the whole time is that the problems that we have with our society are because there are people that they're not learning what they need to learn. They're not experiencing what they need to be experiencing. And we can prevent that. We can by funding our schools the way we fund our military, by paying teachers the way we pay doctors. These should be Tiffany things that we spend money on. As I've said, the national security of this country begins with a healthy and well-educated population. You know, kids have to be able to go to a great school with great teachers and do all kinds of things and figure out what they're interested in. You know, one of the things that we had lots of after-school programs I went to a great public school system, and one of the great things about it was there was all these clubs. You could go do things and play in the band, or you could go join the drama club. There was the debate team. There was everything, you know, and you could go in, and I wrote for the school newspaper. I was in student government. You know, there's all that. Kids need that. And you know who needs that kind of stuff more than anyone else? Poor populations, people that don't have. We've got to lift people up out of poverty and give them those opportunities so they can go out and figure out what they want to do. You know, like I've told people, one of the things that I was lucky in, that the idea that I like to make things. And when you're making things with other people, which is what filmmaking is all about, you're making stuff with other talented people. There's nothing better. So anyway, Claudius, he goes on. Let's see, 5, 6. Let me get this right. Let me just go back and read this whole thought together. Claudius says, yes, the real work requires education, legislation, and advocacy. Real change requires all-day school, universal childcare, refunding arts, sports, and other after-school programs in our socioeconomically disadvantaged neighborhoods. Here, here. These are solutions to the problem or country, not just African Americans. I agree with you 100%. Black Lives Matter doesn't speak for me no more than Jesse Jackson does. This is not to take away from the brave men and women of all backgrounds peacefully protesting against injustice. Protesters, demonstrators, looters, rioters, and agitators are not necessarily the same people. If you're stealing surfboards from a shop in Santa Monica or jewelry from a Macy's, you're probably also not a peaceful demonstrator. Well, Claudius, thank you so much for that. And I absolutely appreciate and I agree with your words. And again, that's where talking comes in, but talking isn't enough. If we want real change, what Claudius just said is exactly what we need. We need, at the most fundamental level, we need to make America stand up for itself. What do we believe in? We should believe in, first and foremost, a healthy, educated population. All kids should be able to go to challenging schools that give them many, many options. And also, they need families that are supportive as well. That's another problem. I mean, the dissolution of the family unit. And I don't suggest I want to live in Mayberry RFD, although that might be nice for a while. We have to treat our population. Why isn't it that first and foremost that the most valuable thing in the United States are Americans? All Americans. If you have a population, a diverse population that's healthy and well-educated, all those different points of view, all those different perspectives, that's where entrepreneurship begins. That's where people decide to go into the arts or create new things, and that's what we want. That's what makes us smart. That's what makes us forward-thinking. That's what brings technological innovation. And nowadays, with social media and the technology we have, is what we need are a healthy, educated population that want for naught. And we could do that. We can actually do that. And like Claude said, the most disadvantaged communities should be the first communities that we go in and lift up. And I really honestly believe that. So Claude, thank you for everything, and thank you for your way too generous ongoing support. Now let me go back. An Honest Asian Guy says, "Hi Rob, remember all those chromium, holofoil, hologram, gatefold, cutout comic book covers from the 90s? Do you still have any?" Honest Asian Guy, I probably have just about everyone, and if there's any you're particularly interested in, you can have them. I mean, I might hang on to a few. I've been going through my comic book collection, and I'm finally going to get them. I'm probably going to get, I have thousands of comics. I'm going to get the decent ones that I can sell for some amount of money slabbed. Elizabeth, she's got tuition to pay, and that's what I'll finally put a comic book collection to use. You're going to sell the comics to send somebody through college. Well, I can actually do that. I don't have kids of my own, but I can send my girlfriend to college. So that's what I'm going to do. But I've got a lot of garbage. And I don't mean to disparage any comic book creator that worked on those books because, hey, I was going through, like I'm looking at certain comics here. Like, it was very funny. I'm going to ask you a question. Like, hang on, let me wait, where'd the other one go? Hold on. So I was thinking about which comic books that I was like this, Spider-Man 300. That's what you're talking about, right? So I was looking through. I can't find. Gosh, I can't. Oh wait, here it is. So I have these two Spider-Man comics, right? The Amazing Spider-Man, Annual 21 from 1987. So I'm looking at these. I'm looking at these. And I'm like, I'll get these slabbed. And I honestly, I was staring at these comics. And, I mean, the printing, the color is different, but they're not, it's not because of they're old. But so I have these comics. I was looking at these. I have 2 copies. This is how stupid I am. Not that I have 2 copies. So I want you all to look at these. So this is Annual 21 from 1987. It's when Spider-Man married Mary Jane Parker. And I had to look at these for like 5 minutes. I'm like, why do I have 2 of these? Now, look. Now, I know you can see this spider symbol is different. Now, I'm looking at these honestly. Wait, can I get this? Let's see. So I have these, and I'll get these both slabbed, and they're in really great condition. So I was looking at these, and I'm like, why do I have 2 of these? It literally took me 5 minutes. And I'm like, oh, in one, Peter Parker's wearing a tux, and in the other, it's Spider-Man. And of course there's other differences. There's superheroes, but I couldn't. And then there's civilians, and I couldn't for the life of me. That's how clueless I've become. And then I found things like Legends of the Dark Knight. Here's a cool die cut cover. I mean, I'm just going through I don't even know why I have half of these things, but I have a lot of them, and they're in great shape. And I'll get some of them slabbed. Like, look, here's the second appearance of Carnage. And so, I mean, I'm just, it's, I wish I could just get rid of all of these, I mean, look, here's a very mint condition of John Byrne's Man of Steel from the 80s. Yeah, but yes, I'm going to get rid of them all. And, so the hologram covers, I mean, this is a perfect example. It's a recreation of the first. I mean, you can kind of see it. I don't know if you can you see? Oh yeah, you can see that there's a hologram, the holo cover. Like I was a sucker. I probably bought everyone. Well, let's see. Jason sends in a tip and says, I'm really disappointed in the 4K of Batman 89 and Batman Returns. They've increased the contrast, which blows colors out, and the skin tones make people look like they're wearing makeup. They did the same to 4K Terminator 2. How can they screw up so badly? Well, how can they screw up so badly? That is a, you'd be surprised. It really comes down to the colorist, and I firmly believe that when they're doing these movies, that somebody should oversee, like the cinematographer should come in and oversee the transfers. Now, I would ask Jason, are you looking at them? Are they HDR10 or is it Dolby Vision? Because I also think if you're not looking at them properly, yeah, you need to take a look. Jason Bueno sends in a super chat and says, can we please get a Robservatory Cribs episode? Okay, I'm in the middle of renovating, and I swear to God, in the next, I want to finish it in like a week, and I will do an episode. I'm actually going to even have cameras around that I can just keep going and doing that. But yeah, absolutely. Robservatory Cribs episode, because I know I owe people 20,000 subscribers. I was supposed to show you all my hot toys, and I haven't done that. So I'm hoping to get everything set up, and I'll do that. I'll take you around the Robservatory. I'll give you a tour, a walking tour of the Robservatory, which would be fun. I promise to do that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is now that time. I'm going to call it. I'm bringing an end to this episode of Robservations, the show about something. This was Robservations episode 439. I want to thank all of your thank everybody for the generous contributions to this channel. You all are you're too good to me. I want to thank you for all your letters. I still have letters. I noticed that Jeffrey Mao, I have a letter from him I need to read. There's still letters to go through. If I haven't gone through yours, I will. I've been slowly chipping away. I will be back tomorrow. Now, everybody, I'll be back here at noon tomorrow. Then there's going to be a Zoom party with which I will give a link to all of you. I think we can have, the last time, I don't think we had quite 100 people, but it was hilarious. And Elizabeth and I will be here, and it's going to start at 2 p.m. 2 p.m. I'm going to do Robservations at noon. I'll do an hour and a half show. And then at 2 o'clock, the Zoom, and I'll give that Zoom link out on the show beforehand. So you'll be able to go into that Zoom link we'll open up the link after I go off the air at 1:30. And then we'll open up, I would imagine the Zoom show would go from 2 to 4, and then we're going to do Whining About Movies, which will be Jerry Maguire. Show me the money. You complete me. That'll be at 7 o'clock. So it'll be a full Robservations day tomorrow, Whining About Movies day, and a Zoom party, the second Zoom party. And it'll be a joint Whining About Movies and Robservations Zoom party. We'll see how it goes. Everybody's been asking me about doing it. Thank you to Roberto Suarez for making it happen. And we'll see. We'll see how it all goes. But that's what we're doing tomorrow. I want to thank Haynock, our new moderator, for being here. I want to thank the Richard for moderating. I also want to thank, of course, Jim Boyers is taking some time off with his wife Heidi, and of course Mike Bodden, and I want to thank Jordy Lyons, and all of the things. Lewis, you had to step back from being a moderator. I'm going to miss Lewis because he had to take care of his sister, and so we won't be seeing him for a while, but I hope he'll come back someday. I really like Lewis a lot. So that's what's up there. And yeah. So I will bring this show to an end. And remember, more than ever, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And I'm curious, Claude, how the discussions that you've brought up that in your chat are clearly the obvious ones that we should be having. How can we all contribute? How can we all start looking at this on a national level, and think globally, act locally, and really start with this kind of reform? Why not use it to, rather than have a real revolution? Why don't we revolutionize America? Why don't we use this turning point in race relations, or at least police relations, and the talk about race that America's having right now, coming out of a pandemic? It would seem that this is a good place to have a reboot. How do we do that? And how can we do that here? I don't know. How can I contribute to that? How can I foster that kind of thing? I would love if we could. We got to figure out what to do. Let's say Jason says, I'm watching the Blu-ray disc that is included with the 4K disc. I don't have a 4K setup yet, but I buy 4K to build a 4K library, but I watch the Blu-ray disc that comes with it on a regular basis. Yeah, I'm telling you, you might want to hold off, though. Wait until, because you'll see it. I understand where you're coming from. But wait until, like, I don't have the Tim Burton Batman 4K disc. I did not get those. Wait a minute. Maybe I did. I don't remember. I have to go look. But yeah, so we definitely wait until before you lose all faith. Wait until you see it actually in 4K. Well, ladies and gentlemen, with that, I come to the end of this show, and I say, as always, it's great to have you here. Zoom party tomorrow. Hope you can be here, Willow. Next time, though, we couldn't see your pretty face. You got to get a light so we can see you. I'd like that, and see if your mom will come on. Everyone wants to meet Willow's mom. Anyway, with that, I say to everyone, have a better day. Have a better day.